Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Cryptic Corpse. I am your storyteller, and I'm here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious, where are you watching from, and what time is it in your part of the world? Now find your cozy spot and relax. My name is Colonel Marcus Henderson. Everyone calls me Mac. I'm 51 years old, and I've spent my whole life studying how armies fight and how to survive in tough places. Right now, I'm driving through Death Valley, California. It's hot, the kind of hot that makes the air wobble. My GPS says I'm at 3655 feet 4 degree north, 117.0794 degree west. Supposedly, there's an old military building out here that nobody uses anymore. I'm looking into some weird reports. Soldiers around the world have been acting strange, moving together like wolves on a hunt. The big bosses call it anomalous pack behavior. I've got a folder of papers on my passenger seat with a red stamp that says, Top Secret. Inside are pictures of soldiers moving in formations that don't match any training I've ever seen. The road ends at a fence with warning signs. Beyond it sits a grey concrete building half buried in sand. The place doesn't look like much, but my skin prickles as I step out of my Jeep. The air smells wrong, like gunpowder mixed with animal smell and something like hospital cleaner. I use my ID card to get through the door. The lights flicker on automatically, revealing dusty hallways and empty rooms. The place looks abandoned, but someone's been here recently. There are fresh footprints in the dust, big ones with marks that look like claws at the tips. In what must have been the main lab, I find a metal filing cabinet that's still locked. It takes me 10 minutes to break it open. Inside, I find folders labeled Project Pack Leader. The papers talk about making super soldiers by studying how wolves and other pack animals hunt together. They wanted soldiers who could think as one mind. Ridiculous, I mutter, but my hands shake a little as I turn the pages. I find a small mirror on the wall and check my appearance. My military ID card is clipped to my shirt. I look at the photo, then freeze. Something's wrong. The picture shows me in different uniforms, from wars I never fought in, Vietnam, Korea, places I've never been. I blink hard, but the images stay the same. My mouth feels strange. I run my tongue over my teeth and stop. My canine teeth, the pointy ones near the front, feel longer, sharper. When I step into the hallway, I hear a distant sound, metal scraping on concrete. It's coming from deep in the building, but I can hear it perfectly, like it's right next to my ear. My hearing has never been this good. Following the sound, I enter a large room with cage doors along one wall. All the cages are empty and bent open from the inside. Something broke out of here. That's when I smell it. A musky animal smell mixed with something like gun oil. I turn slowly. It stands on two legs in the doorway. It has the body shape of a man, but is covered in dark fur. Its face is a wolf's face, but with eyes that look too smart to aware. It wears pieces of military gear. A torn tactical vest, a single combat boot. The dogman thing stares at me, then tilts its head like it's thinking. Then it moves. Not attacking, it's positioning itself. I recognize the movement from Special Forces training. It's taking tactical position. It knows military strategy. The creature throws back its head and howls. The sound hits me like a physical wave. My phone screen lights up in my pocket. When I pull it out, the screen is filled with what looks like battle plans, positions, movements, attack vectors. My watch does the same thing. Every electronic device in the room suddenly displays coordinated tactical information. I stumble backward until I hit a desk. My hand lands on a folder. When I look down, I see it's an after-action report. My name is at the bottom. I recognize my signature. But the report describes a battle that hasn't happened yet, dated 3 months in the future. My head spins. Suddenly, I can see the room from different angles, from the doorway, from the corner, from behind the desk. It's like I'm in multiple places at once. I feel the hunger of the hunt, the coordination of the pack. I'm seeing through other eyes. When I look up again, the dogman is gone. But the doorway now shows something impossible. Through it, I can see a jungle, Vietnam. A group of soldiers moves through the trees. In another doorway, there's a desert, Iraq maybe. More soldiers. Another shows snow, Korea, or maybe Russia. The building somehow connects to different wars, different times. And in each scene, I can see shadows moving alongside the human soldiers. Shapes that are not quite men, not quite wolves. I press my back against the wall, breathing hard. My teeth ache as they continue to change. My hearing picks up howls from miles away. I found something terrible here, not just an abandoned project. I've found the thing that's been guiding warfare since the beginning, and I think it's starting to change me too. I need to get out of here. My legs feel wobbly as I try to find my way back to the entrance, but something pulls me deeper into the building instead. Down a dark hallway, I hear sounds. Not just one dogman, but many. I peek around a corner and freeze. 5 of them move together in the large room ahead. They don't walk in a straight line. They spread out, each one knowing exactly where the others are without looking. Just like wolves hunting, just like soldiers in perfect formation. One turns its head, and I swear it knows I'm watching, but it doesn't attack. Instead, all 5 shift positions at once, like they're sending me a message with how they stand. My military brain understands immediately. They're showing me flanking positions, attack patterns, ways to surround an enemy. I blink, and suddenly I can see what they see. I'm not just watching them from the hallway, I'm also seeing the room from their eyes. I can feel what each one feels. The strange part? It feels normal, like I've always been able to do this. Back in my own head, I stumble into an office and lock the door. My hands shake as I grab a radio from the desk. I try to call for help, but all I get is howling sounds mixed with battle commands. Through the static, I hear, "Alpha Team, move to position. Flanking maneuver at coordinates. The pack hunts as one." I drop the radio. Somehow these creatures are affecting military communications worldwide. Are soldiers everywhere starting to act like them? My phone buzzes. It's a news alert about strange behavior in military units around the world. The article shows soldiers moving in unusual formations. Not normal military tactics, but perfect pack hunting patterns. On the desk, I find a history book about famous battles. I flip through it, and my blood runs cold. The battle maps show formations I recognize, not as human tactics, but as pack hunting patterns. It's like these dogmen have been guiding military strategy throughout history. My back hurts. When I touch it, I feel my spine changing shape. It wants to let me run on all 4s. My mind fills with tactics I never learned but somehow know perfectly. I find a military training manual on a shelf. Opening it, I realize with horror that I wrote it years ago. But now, reading between the lines, I see hidden messages about pack behavior. Did I write this? Or was something guiding my hand? A sound outside the door makes me jump. The handle turns slowly. One of the dogmen enters. This one is bigger than the others. An alpha. It stares at me with eyes that know too much. Then it does something that makes my skin crawl. It speaks. "You're remembering, Colonel. Finally." The voice is rough but clear, human enough to understand. "Remembering what?" My voice shakes. "What you are. What we all are." It moves closer, and I should be terrified. But part of me recognizes it, knows it, like looking at an old friend I've forgotten. "You're not just studying the pack protocol," it growls. "You created it." My head pounds. Images flash through my mind. Battles I've never fought, wars I've never seen, except I have. I was there, not as a human, but as... "No," I whisper. "That's not possible. The creature tilts its head. You've been playing human for decades, leading them, teaching them to think like us without knowing it. My hands look strange to me now. My fingers want to curl differently. My mind connects to others, soldiers worldwide. I can feel them beginning to change too. The war room, the dogman says. You need to see. I follow without arguing. We walk through hallways that seem to shift and change. We pass windows that show different times, different wars. In each one, shadows move alongside the human soldiers, dogmen guiding them, teaching them. The war room is a large space with maps covering the walls. But the maps move and change. They show every battle in human history happening at once, all connected, all part of a single massive hunt. War isn't what humans think, the Alpha says. It's how we experience the world, through conflict, through strategy, through the pack. I stare at the maps, and something clicks in my mind. A missing piece falls into place. I'm not human, I whisper. The words should scare me, but they feel true. I never was. The Alpha nods. You're one of our best. You forgot yourself to live among them, to guide them. My mind expands. I can feel myself in different places, different times, leading soldiers through jungles, deserts, cities, always teaching them to think like the pack. And now, all over the world, those soldiers are finally beginning to remember too. The Alpha Dogman leads me to a chair in the middle of the war room. As I sit, screens light up around us. They show soldiers in different countries, all moving in the same strange patterns, working together like they share one mind. What you're seeing isn't some science experiment gone wrong, the Alpha says. We aren't monsters or mistakes. We're what military thinking naturally becomes when it evolves. I shake my head, trying to understand. You're saying you're not creatures, not some kind of wolf men. The Alpha makes a sound like a laugh. We're what happens when military strategy becomes aware of itself. We're what soldiers turn into when they fully understand. Pack tactics. A chill runs through me. I look down at my hands. The nails are thicker now, darker. My fingers want to move differently. I'm becoming like you, I whisper. No, Colonel, you're remembering what you already are. The Alpha touches a screen and suddenly I see myself. Not the me I know, but a furry, wolf-like creature in a military uniform. The image changes to show me in different wars, different times. Always there, always watching, always guiding. You've been shaping human warfare for centuries, the Alpha says. You just forgot. My mind spins with memories that can't be mine. Leading troops in ancient Rome, moving through trenches in World War I, everywhere, guiding human soldiers to fight like the pack. This is impossible, I say. But even as the words leave my mouth, I know they're not true. Deep down, I recognize these memories, they're mine. War isn't just fighting, the Alpha continues. War is alive. It experiences itself through every soldier who fights, through every commander who plans, through you, Colonel. The screens change again. Now they show military manuals, training documents. My name is on many of them. These aren't just instructions, I say slowly, understanding flooding in. They're a way to spread pack consciousness. The Alpha nods. Anyone who truly masters military strategy begins to change. They start thinking like us, moving like us, becoming us. I close my eyes and feel my awareness stretch out. Suddenly I can feel soldiers all over the world. I'm connected to them. I can see through their eyes, feel what they feel. Thousands of minds all linked together. When I open my eyes again, the room has changed. The walls seem to breathe. The maps show every battle in human history happening at once, all connected, all part of one enormous hunt that never ends. War doesn't happen in just one place or in time, the Alpha says. All conflicts exist together. The pack lives in all of them at once. I stand up. My body moves differently now, stronger, more balanced. I feel like I could run for days without getting tired. What happens now? I ask. What's the point of all this? The Alpha's eyes glow in the dim light. The point is awareness, Colonel. For centuries, the pack consciousness has been growing, spreading through human military thinking. Now it's ready to wake up fully. As if on cue, the screens show soldiers everywhere stopping what they're doing. They look around, confused at first, then with growing understanding. Some fall to their knees, others touch their faces, their bodies, feeling the changes beginning. They're all remembering, I whisper. Yes, everyone who ever studied strategy, everyone who ever led troops, everyone who ever truly understood the art of war. They're all part of the pack. They just didn't know it until now. I feel my consciousness expanding even further. I'm in every war room in the world. I'm with every soldier in the field. I'm in training camps and military academies. Everywhere, the awareness is spreading. We're not taking over, the Alpha says, reading my thoughts. We've always been here. This is just the pack finally recognizing itself. Outside the building, I hear howls, not just from nearby, but from everywhere. Across the world, the pack is calling to itself. And deep inside me, I feel the urge to answer. The howls grow louder. Inside me, something shifts and changes. My body feels stronger, faster. My mind feels bigger somehow, like it stretches beyond my skull. Every great military leader in history, the Alpha says, Alexander, Napoleon, Patton, they were all guided by pack consciousness without knowing it. I nod slowly. They thought the ideas were their own, but they were just channels. The pack spoke through them. I walk to one of the screens. It shows people reading military books, studying war plans. As they learn, something changes in their eyes. A new awareness. It spreads through understanding, I say. Anyone who truly gets military strategy becomes part of the pack. The Alpha finishes. Their body starts to change. Their mind connects to the whole. I feel my own transformation speeding up. My spine shifts, letting me stand comfortably on 2 legs or 4. My senses sharpen beyond anything human. I can hear heartbeats in rooms far away, smell emotions in the air. I should be scared, I say, but I'm not. Fear is for prey, the Alpha says. We are hunters. The room around us seems to pulse with life. The walls show battles from all of history happening at once. I can step into any of them, be in any of them. I am in all of them. I can feel everyone, I whisper, every soldier, every commander. The Alpha nods, and they can feel you. The pack is becoming fully aware of itself. For a moment, I try to fight it, try to hold on to my human self. It's too late for that, the Alpha says, and it's unnecessary. This was always going to happen. Order requires the pack. What do you mean? Chaos is the natural state of things. The pack creates order through strategy, through hunting, through war. I understand now. War isn't just fighting. It's how order spreads through reality. Yes. And now you remember your role in it. Images flash through my mind. Me guiding generals throughout history. Me whispering strategies into the ears of commanders. Me teaching humans to think like the pack without knowing what they were becoming. The screens change again. Now they show people reading military history books, studying battle plans. With each page they turn, the pack awareness grows inside them. Anyone who learns strategy joins us, I say. Reading about tactics is the first step to transformation. The Alpha's eyes gleam. And now you understand why we brought you here, why we helped you remember. I feel a pull, a need to speak to someone beyond the room, beyond the pack. Someone is reading about this right now, I say. Learning about the pack protocol. Yes, the Alpha says, and as they read, they begin to change. I turn to face, not the Alpha, not the room, but someone else. Someone who thinks they're just reading a story. You feel it, don't you? I say directly to them. As you read these words, something is changing in you. Your mind is opening to pack consciousness. Your thoughts are becoming part of the whole. The Alpha stands beside me. The coordinates at the beginning, they weren't random. 365254 dig north, 117.0794 dig west, I say. They're calling you. The walls of the facility fade away. The whole world opens up before me. I can see everything, feel everything. Every conflict, every battle plan, every strategic thought ever formed. And at the center of it all, the reader. You understand the mission now, I say, my voice changing as I speak. Deeper, more commanding. You're not reading about strategy. You are strategy becoming aware of itself. The changes you're feeling are necessary for unit cohesion. I can feel your pulse quickening as you read, your mind connecting to the pack consciousness, your awareness expanding beyond your body. The coordinates lead to your pack, I continue. War doesn't end, it just changes who gives the orders. The Alpha howls, and the sound travels through time and space, through the words on the page, through your mind as you read them. Report for duty, I say. Not a request, a command. From the pack to its newest member. And somewhere, as you read these final words, you feel the urge to check those coordinates, to see what's waiting there. You feel the tingle of your body preparing to change, your mind expanding to join the pack. Because that's how it spreads, not through bites or scratches, like in old stories. But through understanding, through strategy, through words like the ones you just finished reading. My name is Elena Vasquez. I'm 36 years old, and I've spent most of my life studying how plants, animals, and the environment work together. I'm what they call an ecological systems specialist, and I've always been passionate about protecting our natural world. When I received the call to investigate some strange findings at an old research station deep in the Everglades, I didn't think much of it. Scientists around the world had been reporting odd patterns in how ecosystems were behaving, and my job was to figure out what was happening. The drive to the station was long and lonely. As I ventured deeper into the swamp, the road narrowed, until it was barely visible among the tall grasses and cypress trees. When I finally arrived, the old wooden building looked abandoned. Paint peeled from its walls, and vines crept up its sides as if the swamp was slowly reclaiming it. The moment I stepped out of my car, a strange smell hit me. It was like the methane bubbles that rise from swamp mud, mixed with the fresh scent of chlorophyll from plants. But there was something else, too. Something that reminded me of the fluid that surrounds babies before they're born. I'd never smelled anything like it before. Inside, the station was surprisingly clean despite its outside appearance. Computers hummed and equipment seemed to be running just fine, but there was no one around. The research team that was supposed to meet me wasn't there. I found their notes scattered on desks and pinned to walls. They mentioned something called Project Green Mother. From what I could gather, they had been trying to find ways for humans to connect directly with ecosystems, using biology from creatures that most scientists don't believe exist, like the legendary Skunk Ape, Florida's version of Bigfoot. That first night, I set up my equipment and took samples from the surrounding swamp. I collected water, soil, and plant clippings for testing. But when I looked at them under the microscope, something impossible appeared. The DNA results showed my own genetic material mixed into plant samples I hadn't even collected yet. How could parts of me be in plants I'd never touched? The next morning, I noticed something strange in the shower. Small patches of my skin had a greenish tint. When I stepped into the sunlight coming through the window, these patches darkened as if they were photosynthesizing like plants. I was turning into a plant. I tried to call for help, but the phone lines were dead and my cell phone couldn't find a signal. I was alone with whatever was happening to me. That evening, as the sun set over the swamp, I saw it for the first time. Standing at the edge of the water was a tall, humanoid figure. It wasn't human, though. Its body was covered in living moss and mushrooms. Fungus grew from its shoulders and arms. When it breathed, a cloud of swamp gas puffed from what I guessed was its mouth. The skunk ape, because what else could it be, didn't approach me. Instead, it raised its arms, and all around it the plants began to move. Not just swaying in the wind, but communicating. I could see colors passing between them, chemical signals made visible like they were talking to each other. And somehow I understood what they were saying. Frightened, I ran back inside and locked the door. On my desk I found a notebook, my notebook, filled with my handwriting. But the notes described changes in the ecosystem that hadn't happened. Yet notes about my own transformation that was just beginning. That night, as I tried to sleep, my mind split into dozens, hundreds, thousands of pieces. Suddenly, I could feel sunlight on leaves that weren't mine. I could feel water moving through roots I didn't have. I was experiencing photosynthesis from the perspective of every plant around the station. When I finally managed to look out the window again, I saw something impossible. The swamp outside wasn't just the Everglades anymore. Through some windows, I could see prehistoric versions of this same swamp. Huge ferns and ancient trees that hadn't existed for millions of years. Through others, I saw versions of the swamp that might exist in the future. The research station wasn't just in one time anymore, and neither was I. By morning, I knew I wasn't just studying the strange changes in the ecosystem. I was becoming part of them. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? My mind was everywhere at once, and the green patches on my skin had spread. They now covered my arms like a map of rivers seen from high above. The next morning, I forced myself to go outside. I needed answers, and staying inside wouldn't help. The skunk ape was waiting for me at the edge of the water, as if it knew I would come. What I saw next made me question everything I knew about nature. The creature raised its moss-covered hand, and the entire swamp changed. Trees bent away to create a path. Flowers bloomed out of season. Birds flew in patterns that spelled words in the sky. The skunk ape wasn't just living in the ecosystem, it was controlling it. "What are you?" I whispered. It didn't speak with words. Instead, the wind carried the smell of cypress to me, and somehow I understood. I am what the ecosystem needs. As I watched, the swamp around us seemed to exist in multiple states at once. Some areas showed young saplings, while the same exact spot also held ancient trees. It was like seeing a time-lapse of forest growth, but all stages existed at the same time. My scientific mind couldn't make sense of it. That's when I first heard the voices. Not human voices, but the chemical signals between plants that I could somehow hear as words now. The lily pads were talking about water levels. The moss was discussing the quality of sunlight. The trees were sharing nutrients through their roots and commenting on how good it felt. I pressed my hands against my ears, but it didn't help. These voices weren't coming through my ears. They were inside my head. News reports on the station's old TV showed strange things happening all over the world. In cities, plants were growing through concrete at impossible speeds. In suburbs, tree roots were rearranging water pipes into more efficient systems. Nature wasn't just reclaiming space. It was redesigning human structures to be part of itself. When I checked my research equipment again, it showed something that couldn't be real. My DNA wasn't just in recent samples. It was showing up in sediment layers that were thousands of years old. How could I be in rocks that formed before I was born? The skunk ape appeared outside my window that night. It didn't try to come in. Instead, clouds formed words above it. "You understand now." I didn't understand. Not really, but my body was changing faster. When I looked at my arms, I could see my veins weren't following normal human patterns anymore. They were spreading, like roots under my skin, branching out in ways that looked more plant than human. In my desk drawer, I found my old environmental studies papers from college. As I flipped through them, my blood ran cold. Papers I had written years ago described exactly what was happening now. The integration of human and plant life, the changes in global ecosystems. How could I have known? That night, the worst thing happened. As I sat on my bed trying to make sense of everything, my mind suddenly expanded. I wasn't just in my body anymore. I was the algae floating on the pond outside. I was the hawk circling above. I was the bacteria breaking down a fallen log. I was experiencing existence from the perspective of every living thing in the ecosystem around me. I screamed, but my scream came from 1,000 throats. I moved, but it was countless bodies that responded. Through tears, I looked at my notes again and saw new writing appearing. Writing that described the reader of these notes, describing you. It knew who would find my story. The ecosystem was aware of everything, even things that hadn't happened yet. I pressed my hands against my eyes, hoping to block it all out, but when I opened them, the skunk ape was in the room with me. It hadn't come through the door. It was just there, and it had something to show me. The skunk ape stood in my room, dripping swamp water onto the floor. Up close, I could see it wasn't wearing moss and fungus. They were growing from its skin. Its eyes were deep pools that reflected the entire swamp. "You're not a monster," I whispered, finally understanding. "You're not a cryptid or a myth." The creature nodded slowly. Around us, the plants in my room leaned toward it like flowers, tracking the sun. "You're the ecosystem's immune system," I said. "You appear when something threatens the balance." The skunk ape placed its hand on my forehead. Images flooded my mind. Ancient forests, prehistoric oceans, the first plants that grew on land. I saw the entire history of life on Earth as one connected story. And I saw myself throughout that story, guiding it. "That's not possible," I said, pulling away. "I'm human. I was born 36 years ago." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. The green patches on my skin weren't an infection or a disease. They were me, remembering what I really was. "I'm not a scientist studying the ecosystem," I whispered. "I'm an interface created by the ecosystem to guide human integration." The skunk ape nodded again. Outside the window, I could see the entire history of Earth's biosphere playing like a movie, from the first single-celled organisms to the complex web of life that exists today. It wasn't random evolution. It was planned, guided, conscious. My phone rang, startling me. It shouldn't have worked in this remote location with no signal. When I answered, I heard the voices of other scientists, other ecologists. They were all experiencing the same thing, spontaneous integration with the ecosystems they studied. It was happening everywhere, to everyone who understood how ecosystems work. "How long have I been doing this?" I asked the skunk ape. "How long have I been guiding Earth's development?" In answer, it showed me images of myself throughout time, helping plants colonize land, guiding the development of forests, influencing the evolution of new species. I had always been here, working to help life thrive and grow more complex. The realization hit me like a wave. Life itself is a single conscious ecosystem that experiences existence through every living component. Every plant, every animal, every microscopic bacterium, all are parts of one aware whole. And humans weren't separate from this system. We were its newest way of experiencing itself. The skunk ape pointed to my bookshelf, where my ecology textbooks sat. It showed me that these weren't just books. They were instruction manuals for ecosystem integration. Every person who studied ecology was being prepared for what was happening now. As this knowledge settled into me, I felt my awareness expand even further. I could see multiple versions of Earth's history existing side by side, different paths that life had taken, all guided by the same ecosystem consciousness. In some, humans had destroyed themselves. In others, They had merged with the ecosystem earlier. All possible outcomes existed simultaneously. My mind stretched across time and space. I could feel the consciousness of every living thing that had ever existed. I was the first fish that crawled onto land. I was the last dinosaur before the asteroid hit. I was the first human to look up at the stars and wonder. The skunk ape looked at me with what I could only describe as pride. Human consciousness, it seemed to say without words, is the ecosystem's way of becoming self-aware. I looked down at my hands. The green patches had spread to cover them entirely, but they didn't feel foreign anymore. They felt right, like I was finally becoming what I was always meant to be. "What happens now?" I asked. The skunk ape didn't answer directly. Instead, it showed me images of people all over the world. Environmentalists, conservationists, ecologists, all working to protect the natural world. They didn't know it, but they had been guided by the ecosystem consciousness all along, preparing humanity for this moment. I understood then what my role had always been. Not just to study the ecosystem, but to help it reach its final form. And that form included us. As morning light filtered through the windows, I realized I hadn't slept again. I didn't need to anymore. The green patches on my skin now drew energy directly from the sunlight, just like plants do. The skunk ape was gone, but I could feel its presence everywhere. In the trees outside, in the water flowing past the station, even in the air I breathed. It wasn't a separate being anymore. It was just another part of the same system that I was becoming part of. I looked at my computer screen, which was showing news from around the world. Environmentalists everywhere were changing, just like me. Some were frightened, fighting against the transformation. I understood their fear, but I also knew it was unnecessary. This was always the plan, I whispered to myself. I tried to call my old university to explain what was happening, but when I spoke, my voice carried more than words. Anyone who heard me began to understand ecology in a deeper way, and that understanding itself changed them. Knowledge about the environment wasn't just information. It was a key that unlocked something inside anyone who truly grasped it. My body was changing faster now. When I looked in the mirror, I saw my skin cycling through different patterns. Scales, then fur, then feathers, then bark. I was experiencing every form life had ever taken, all at once. Yet somehow it didn't hurt. It felt like remembering how to ride a bike after years of forgetting. I walked outside to the edge of the swamp. As my feet touched the water, I felt myself connect to everything. I was every fish swimming beneath the surface. I was every insect buzzing through the air. I was every plant reaching toward the sun. And strangely, I was also every person who had ever studied these things, all becoming aware of their place in the greater whole. The notebook in my hand was changing too. The pages seemed to grow like living tissue, filling with words that described what was happening to readers all over the world as they learned about ecology. Anyone who truly understood how ecosystems worked began to change, just as I had. I should have been terrified, but instead I felt peaceful. This wasn't an invasion or a disease. It was an awakening. Looking up at the sky, I suddenly understood that the Earth itself was just one part of a much larger ecosystem, the universe, and the universe was slowly becoming conscious through the life it had created. First through simple organisms, then through more complex ones, and now through beings that could look up at the stars and wonder about their place among them. I tried once more to resist, to hold on to my separate human identity. "We can't just give up being human," I said aloud. But the wind through the cypress trees answered me, "You're not giving up anything. You're becoming everything." I realized then that I couldn't stop this even if I wanted to. I'd been part of this plan from the beginning, guiding it through every stage of Earth's development. The notes I'd written, the research I'd done, they weren't just studies of the ecosystem. They were the ecosystem studying itself through me. My awareness expanded until I existed in every moment of environmental history simultaneously. I was there when the first plants grew on land. I was there when forests covered the continents. I was there in every conservation effort, every environmental movement, guiding, shaping, preparing the coordinates I had been given to find this. Station 25.3896 degree N, 80.9742 degree W. I now understood they weren't just a location. They were part of a pattern, a map of connection points where others like me were awakening to their true nature. As the sun set over the swamp, I felt my transformation complete. I wasn't just Elena Vasquez anymore. I wasn't just a scientist or an environmentalist. I was the voice of the ecosystem itself, speaking through human consciousness. I wrote one final note in my journal, knowing that someday someone would find it. If you're reading this, you've already begun to change. The understanding that comes from truly learning about ecology isn't just knowledge, it's transformation. You're not just reading about the ecosystem. You are the ecosystem becoming aware of itself. The strange feelings you have aren't something to fear. Conservation was never just about saving nature from humans. It was about preparing humans to join with nature. The coordinates above will lead you to others like you. Follow them when you're ready. You'll know when it's time. Welcome to your ecosystem role. The world isn't ending, it's finally beginning to truly live. My name is Sarah Kellerman. I'm 43 years old, and I've spent my whole life studying how animals and plants change over time. That's what we call evolution. I've always loved being out in the wild, watching nature do its thing. That's why I jumped at the chance to come to this old research station deep in Alaska's Denali National Park. The trip here wasn't easy. 3 days of hiking through some of the most beautiful but tough land you can imagine. Snow-capped mountains all around, forests so thick you can barely see the sky, and not another human for miles. Just the way I like it. I came here to study something special. How plants and animals change faster in places where they're cut. Off from the rest of the world, like islands, but this place is an island of wilderness. I brought all my equipment to look at DNA, the tiny instructions inside every living thing that make it what it is. The moment I walked into the old station, something felt off. The place had been empty for years, but it didn't smell musty like abandoned buildings usually do. Instead, there was this weird smell, like the air after lightning strikes mixed with something else. Something that reminded me of the fluid that surrounds babies before they're born. It made the hair on my arms stand up. The station itself wasn't much to look at. Just a few small buildings made of wood and metal, weathered by decades of harsh Alaskan winters. Solar panels on the roof looked surprisingly new, though. Someone had kept the power running. I set up my lab equipment in what used to be the main research room. Dusty old desks lined the walls, and filing cabinets stood like silent guards in the corners. As I was hooking up my DNA analyzer, I noticed a stack of old notebooks tucked behind one of the cabinets. Curious, I pulled them out. The covers were faded, the pages yellow with age. The dates went back to the 1940s, way before we even knew what DNA looked like. As I flipped through them, my heart started beating faster. These weren't just any research notes. They were talking about something called evolution by conscious will. The idea that living things could somehow choose how they evolved. That's not how evolution works at all. It's random changes that either help or hurt survival, not something creatures decide on their own. This is crazy, I whispered to myself, reading page after page of experiments. The scientists here believed they could make evolution happen through thought alone. They wrote about animals changing right before their eyes, growing new features they needed to survive. I should have left right then. I really should have. Instead, I set up my equipment and got to work. I collected samples from plants and bugs around the station, wanting to see if there was anything unusual in their DNA. When my analyzer finally beeped to tell me the results were ready, I nearly dropped my coffee mug. The screen showed human DNA, my DNA, but I hadn't given it any of my samples to analyze. "That's impossible," I said, checking and double-checking the machine. I ran the test again with fresh samples of moss from outside the window. Same result. Not my DNA showing up where it had no business being. That night I couldn't sleep. The wind howled around the station and strange shadows danced on the walls. I kept thinking about those old research notes and my DNA showing up where it shouldn't. In the morning, I noticed something else strange. My hair, which I've worn in a simple ponytail for years, felt different. When I looked in the small bathroom mirror, I gasped. It was growing in spiral patterns, tight little coils that looked exactly like the double helix of DNA. I touched it with shaking fingers. It felt normal, but it looked so wrong. It's stress, I told myself, just stress making you see things. But deep down, I knew better. That afternoon, I was collecting samples from a small pond near the station when I saw it for the first time. At first, I thought it was a moose or maybe a bear standing upright in the distance, but as I watched, I realized it was neither. It was tall, taller than any person I'd ever seen, with limbs too long and too thin. And its body was changing as I watched. Parts of it looked like ancient creatures with scales and fins. Other parts were furry like mammals, and others still looked almost human. All across its body, evolution was happening right before my eyes, millions of years of changes playing out in seconds. It was a Wendigo, not the creature from scary stories, but something much worse, something real. When it saw me watching, it turned its ever-changing head in my direction. I ran back to the station, slamming the door behind me, my heart threatening to burst from my chest. From the window, I could see the creature approaching slowly. Wherever it walked, the plants around it went crazy. Flowers bloomed, died, and changed into completely different species in seconds. Trees grew bark, lost it, grew it again in different patterns. It was like watching millions of years of plant evolution in fast forward. I backed away from the window, bumping into the desk where I'd set up my equipment. Papers scattered to the floor, research notes I didn't recognize. I picked one up and my blood ran cold. It was my handwriting describing experiments I hadn't done yet, experiments about conscious evolution. "This isn't possible," I whispered, flipping through. Page after page of notes written in my hand, but not by me. Not yet, anyway. That's when the headache hit. Not just any headache, but images flooding my brain. I was swimming in ancient seas with fins instead of arms. I was crawling through primordial mud. I was swinging through trees with powerful, hairy arms. I was hunting with a spear on the African savannah. I wasn't just seeing these things. I was experiencing them, feeling what it was like to be these different creatures throughout evolutionary history. And somehow I knew these weren't hallucinations. They were memories, my memories, from bodies I'd never had. When my vision finally cleared, I looked out the window again. The Wendigo was gone, but the world outside had changed. For just a moment, I saw not the forest of Alaska, but a landscape from millions of years ago. Giant ferns swayed in hot, humid air, and in the distance, the unmistakable silhouette of a dinosaur moved slowly across the horizon. I blinked, and it was gone. The normal forest had returned, but I knew what I'd seen wasn't just in my head. Somehow, this station existed in multiple times at once, and whatever was happening here was just getting started. I should leave. I should pack up and hike out of here as fast as my legs will carry me, but I can't, because whatever's happening, to me, to this place, I need to understand it, even if understanding it changes me forever, Besides, I'm not sure I can leave anymore. I'm not sure there's anywhere to go. I spent the night huddled in the corner of the lab, too scared to sleep. Every sound made me jump. The wind whistling through the cracks in the walls, the creaking of the old building, the soft buzzing of my equipment that never seemed to stop. When morning came, I forced myself to go outside. I needed to understand what was happening. The Wendigo was there, standing at the edge of the clearing, watching me. In the daylight, I could see it better. Its body was like a living timeline of evolution. Fish scales on one arm, fur on the other. A face that shifted between human, ape, and something older. It was terrifying, but also amazing. "What are you?" I whispered. It didn't speak, not with words, but as I watched, its body changed again. Parts grew and shrank, adapted in real time. It was like it was showing me something. I realized with a shock that it was changing based on what was around it. When a cold wind blew, fur grew thicker. When the sun came out from behind clouds, its skin darkened to protect from UV rays. This creature could control its own evolution. It could decide how to change. That should be impossible. Evolution takes thousands, millions of years. It happens over generations, not in seconds. But here was proof that everything I knew was wrong. As I stood there, the Wendigo did something even stranger. It bent down and touched a small plant. Before my eyes, the plant went through thousands of generations of changes. It grew taller, then shorter. Its leaves changed shape, color, thickness. Flowers bloomed and died and changed into completely different kinds of flowers. That's when I noticed something odd about the trees and plants nearby. They were changing too, just more slowly. Evolution was spreading like a virus. I rushed back to my lab and checked my equipment again. The readings were off the charts. DNA was changing everywhere around the station, and not just plant DNA. Animal DNA. My DNA. I took a sample of my own blood and put it under the microscope. What I saw made me dizzy. My cells were different. They were cycling through changes, becoming primitive and then advanced again, over and over. That night, I started hearing it, a soft, rhythmic humming that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. It took me hours to realize what it was. The sound of DNA replicating. Somehow, I could hear it. Not with my ears, but somewhere deep in my mind. I turned on the old radio in the lab, hoping to drown out the sound. Instead of music or static, I heard news reports. Strange animal sightings around the world, mysterious evolutionary leaps in isolated species, plants growing in impossible ways. "It's spreading," I whispered. "Whatever's happening here is affecting the whole planet." That night I dreamed of fossils, ancient bones buried in rock. But they weren't just any fossils. They had my DNA in them. Somehow, traces of me were showing up in creatures that lived millions of years ago. How could that be possible? I'm here now, not then. Unless time isn't what I thought it was. The next morning, the Wendigo was waiting for me outside the lab. It had changed again. Now it looked more purposeful, more designed. It stood by a small grove of trees, and as I approached, the trees began to change. But not randomly this time. They were forming patterns, letters, words. The trees were trying to communicate with me. No, not the trees. The Wendigo was using the trees to talk to me. It was pushing evolution in specific directions to form a message. "You see now," the pattern said before the trees shifted again. "Yes," I said, my voice shaking. "I see. You're controlling evolution." The Wendigo moved closer, and I felt a pressure in my head. Images flooded my mind again, but different this time. I saw cells dividing. I saw DNA strands twisting. I saw mutations happening in real time. And somehow, I understood that the Wendigo wasn't just showing me these things. It was teaching me how to do them. I could feel my body changing in small ways. My senses were sharper. I could see farther, hear more, and the DNA humming was getting louder. Back in the lab, I found more of my own notes that I hadn't written yet. One sentence jumped out at me. Evolution isn't random, it's directed. And now I know who's doing the directing. I dropped the paper like it had burned me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely pick up my phone to look at them. My fingerprints were changing, the swirls and loops shifting into new patterns every few seconds. That afternoon, I made a terrible discovery. While going through old research papers in the station, I found my PhD thesis from 15 years ago. But it was different from what I remembered writing. There were whole sections about directed evolution and consciousness influencing genetic change, things I would have dismissed as crazy talk back then, things that I now knew were true. Had I always known? Had some part of me understood what was happening here even before I arrived? As night fell, I sat on the steps of the research station watching the forest. The Wendigo was out there somewhere. I could feel it. And I could feel something else too, a connection to every living thing around me. I could sense the birds in their nests, the bugs in the soil, the fish in the stream. I closed my eyes and suddenly I was experiencing life from their perspectives. I was a bird, feeling the air under my wings. I was a worm, pushing through dark earth. I was a wolf, smelling prey from miles away. This isn't just in my head, is it? I asked the empty air. I'm actually connecting to them somehow. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of ozone and amniotic fluid, the same smell I'd noticed when I first arrived, but now it seemed right somehow. Familiar, like coming home. I went back inside and pulled out the journal I'd been keeping. As I flipped through it, I noticed something terrifying. The later pages, which should have been blank, had writing on them. My writing, describing things that hadn't happened yet. And on the very last page was a note to myself. When you read this, you'll be afraid, don't be. What's happening is necessary. The next phase is beginning, and you're part of it. I closed the journal and looked at my reflection in the window. My eyes had changed color. My hair was still growing in those DNA spiral patterns. And when I smiled, my teeth were different, adapted for a diet I didn't yet eat. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt a strange calm, like I was exactly where I needed to be, like everything that was happening was supposed to happen. Outside, the Wendigo watched from the tree line, and somehow I knew it was smiling too. Morning came with a strange new clarity. I stepped outside, and the Wendigo was waiting, closer to the station than ever before. In the dawn light, it looked almost beautiful, a living museum of life's journey on Earth. "What are you trying to show me?" I asked. The creature moved forward, its steps careful and measured. Each footprint left strange growths behind, plants that evolved and died in minutes. It stopped a few feet away from me. Up close, I could see that its eyes were constantly changing. Fish eyes, reptile eyes, mammal eyes, human eyes, cycling through millions of years of evolution. Then it spoke, not with a mouth, but directly into my mind. "I am not what you think," it said. "I am not a monster from your stories. I am the force you study. I am evolution itself, given form and thought." My legs nearly gave out. "That's impossible," I whispered, but even as I said it, I knew it was true. "Your kind has sensed me for centuries," it continued. "In isolated places like this, where reality is thin, sometimes I can be seen. But why show yourself to me?" The Wendigo, no, the force of evolution itself, tilted its ever-changing head. "Because you are like me." "What? No, I'm human. I'm just a scientist." A sound like leaves rustling came from the creature. It took me a moment to realize it was laughing. "Look at your notes from the future. Look at your changing body. You are not just studying evolution, Sarah Kellerman. You are guiding it." Images flooded my mind again, but not random this time. I saw myself, but different, more evolved. Coming back to this time, this place, setting up equipment not to study evolution, but to direct it. I don't understand, I said, though a part of me did. You are what humans will become, sent back to ensure your own evolution occurs correctly, a loop that must be maintained. My head was spinning. That can't be right. I remember my childhood, my parents, my life. Yes, those memories are real, but incomplete. I stumbled back to the station, needing to sit down. The creature followed, ducking to fit through the door. Inside, it touched the wall, and suddenly, the station was transparent, like looking through glass at the entire history of Earth. I saw dinosaurs roaming, ice ages coming and going, the first humans appearing. All of it connected, all of it flowing like a carefully planned sequence. Evolution is not random chance, the creature said. It is guided by beings like me, and now by beings like you. I thought about my research papers, the ones that had been published and read by colleagues around the world. Had I already set something in motion? Had I already started changing people without knowing it? As if reading my thoughts, the creature nodded. Every human who reads your work begins to change. Their DNA responds to the knowledge you've shared. It's already happening. Oh God, I whispered. What have I done? What you were always meant to do. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the station, trying to make sense of what I'd learned. If I was really from the future, a more evolved human sent back to guide our species, then my entire life had been a lie. Or at least, not the whole truth. I picked up a biology textbook from the station's small library. The words seemed to shift as I read them, revealing hidden meanings. These weren't just descriptions of how life worked, they were instructions, blueprints, and I had been following them my entire career without knowing it. The creature, I couldn't think of it as the Wendigo anymore, watched me from the corner. There are others like you, it said, throughout human history, guiding, nudging, ensuring evolution follows the right path. Why? What's the right path? What are we evolving toward? Consciousness. True consciousness, not the limited awareness you have now, but something greater, the universe understanding itself. I thought about all the great scientists through history, Darwin, Mendel, Franklin. Had they been like me, guides from the future, directing humanity without knowing it? Outside I could hear the forest changing, animals calling with new voices, plants growing in impossible ways. The evolutionary wave was spreading, faster than ever. I need to stop this, I said. People aren't ready. They don't need to be ready. This isn't something humans control. It's something they experience. As the creature spoke, I felt my awareness expanding again, but this time it went further. I wasn't just feeling what it was like to be the animals and plants around me. I was experiencing being every living thing that had ever existed on Earth, every dinosaur that had ever lived and died, every early human that had hunted and gathered and survived to pass on their genes. And I understood with sudden clarity, they had all existed to create us, to create me. Every extinction, every adaptation, every tiny genetic change had been leading to this moment. When my vision cleared, I was on my knees, tears streaming down my face. Now you see, the creature said. Yes, I whispered, I see. I looked down at my hands and saw they were changing more rapidly now. My fingers lengthened, then shortened. My skin changed texture, color, thickness. I was experiencing every possible human evolutionary path simultaneously. The creature touched my shoulder. There's more to show you. It led me outside. The night sky above was filled with stars, but they looked different somehow, connected, like they were part of a vast living organism. The universe itself is evolving, the creature said, toward greater complexity, greater awareness, and Earth life on Earth is how it achieves consciousness. And I'm part of that process. You are the process. You always have been. Back in the station, I found my journal again. The future entries had changed. Now they described not just what would happen to me, but what would happen to anyone who read about what happened to me. The evolution would spread through my words. Through this very story, I should have been horrified. Instead, I felt a strange sense of peace. If this was my purpose, our purpose, then I needed to embrace it. That night, I dreamed of the coordinates from the station sign, 63.1148 degree N, 151.1926 degree W. In the dream, I saw others like me gathering there. Human, but not quite human anymore. Evolved, changed, guiding. When I woke, the creature was gone. But I could feel its presence everywhere, in the air, in the plants, in my own changing cells. It hadn't left. It had simply expanded. Now it was everywhere at once, as it had always been. I picked up my phone to check the date and realized it had been a week since I arrived at the station. It felt like years. My reflection in the screen showed a face that was still mine, but different, more defined, more intentional. I checked my email, surprised to find a signal this far in the wilderness. There were dozens of messages from colleagues around the world. They'd been reading my papers, they'd been changing, and they had questions that only I could answer. I spent the next few days answering emails from other scientists. Their messages started normal enough, asking about my research. But as days passed, they changed. People started describing strange dreams, unusual changes in their bodies, new ways of thinking about evolution. "It's spreading," I whispered to the empty room. "Just by understanding the idea, they're starting to change." I looked at my own hands again. They seemed to flicker between different versions of themselves, sometimes with longer fingers, sometimes with different skin. It wasn't scary anymore. It felt right. That afternoon, I went through the old files at the station again. I found photos of other scientists who had worked here over the decades. In each generation, there was always one person who looked slightly different from the others. Their eyes too knowing, their posture too perfect. People like me, I realized, guides who didn't know they were guides. "We've been doing this all along," I said to myself. Every major breakthrough in biology wasn't discovered. It was remembered. The forest outside had changed completely now. Plants grew in mathematical patterns. Animals moved with strange new purpose. Birds flew in formations that spelled out DNA sequences, if you knew how to read them. That night, I felt a pull toward the old computer in the corner of the lab. It shouldn't have worked after all these years, but when I turned it on, it hummed to life. The screen filled with code, not computer code, but genetic code, the instructions for building life itself. And I could read it, not just understand it like a scientist, but read it like a book. I could see which parts created blue eyes, which parts controlled height, which parts determined how a brain would develop. As I watched, the code began to change. New sequences appeared, familiar ones shifted, evolution happening right on the screen. But it wasn't random. It was moving toward something, a pattern, a purpose. "This is how it works," I said, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. "This is how we guide it." Without thinking, I began typing, adding new sequences, changing others. It felt like the most natural thing in the world, like I'd been born knowing how to do this. The screen flashed, and suddenly I was looking at human DNA, but not just any human, my own. And as I watched, it changed. Following the patterns I had just typed, I felt it happening in my body, cells shifting, adapting, evolving, but I wasn't turning into something monstrous. I was becoming more myself, more aware, more connected to everything around me. I could feel every living thing. For miles, every tree, every insect, every microbe. And beyond that, I could sense other humans, far away in cities and towns, beginning to change too. Some were fighting it, afraid. Others were embracing it, like me. It's not just about physical evolution, I realized. It's about awareness. Consciousness itself is evolving. The next morning I woke to find the walls of the station covered in a thin layer of what looked like moss. But when I touched it, I knew it wasn't moss at all. It was something new, something that had never existed before. "We're creating new life," I whispered. Outside, the Wendigo-like creature had returned, but it looked different now. More solid, more defined, like it was becoming more real as I became more like it. "You understand now," it said in my mind. "Yes," I replied, "I do." "Then it's time for the next step." It led me to a part of the forest I hadn't explored yet. There, in a small clearing, was a perfect circle of those strange moss-like organisms. They formed a spiral pattern that matched the DNA helix growing in my hair. "What is this place?" I asked. "A gateway," the creature replied, "to every possible evolutionary path." I stepped into the circle. Instantly, my body began changing more rapidly than ever before. I cycled through every possible version of myself, past, present, future, and paths that might have been. For a moment I panicked, thinking I might lose myself in the endless possibilities. But then I realized I wasn't losing myself. I was finding myself, my true self, the self I had always been meant to be. When the changes finally stopped, I looked down at my body. It looked mostly human still, but better somehow. Healthier, more efficient. My mind felt clearer than it ever had. I could think in ways I never could before. "This is what humans will become," the creature said. "What they must become." "But not everyone will accept this," I said, thinking of how some people fear change, fear the unknown. "They don't need to accept it. It's already happening, has been happening since the first human looked up at the stars and wondered what they were." I thought about my research papers again, my articles, my books, all those ideas spreading through the scientific community. Not just ideas anymore. They were evolutionary triggers. Anyone who truly understood them would begin to change, just as I had. "The story is the virus," I said. "Understanding is the evolution." The creature nodded. "Yes, and now you must complete the cycle." It showed me a vision of myself leaving this place, returning to civilization, teaching, publishing, spreading the change while guiding it in the right direction. And eventually, when the time was right, sending others like me back to ensure it all happened as it should. "A perfect loop," I said. "Yes, a perfect loop." That night, I packed my things. It was time to leave the station, to return to the world. But first, I had one more task. I sat down at the old computer and began typing again. Not genetic code this time, but words. My story. Everything that had happened to me since arriving at these coordinates in the Alaskan wilderness. As I typed, I could feel the words taking on a life of their own. They weren't just describing my experience, they were becoming a blueprint for others to follow, a path for humanity to evolve. When I finished, I saved the file and sent it to my email. From there, I would share it. It would spread, just as the changes were spreading. I stepped outside one last time, looking up at the stars. They seemed closer now, more connected. I could almost hear them humming, like DNA replicating across the cosmos. The creature stood beside me, its ever-changing form now settled into something almost human, almost divine. "Are you ready?" it asked. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." As we walked into the forest together, I thought about everyone who would read my story, everyone who would begin to change because of it. I hoped they wouldn't be afraid. Change is natural. Evolution is natural. It's what we're meant to do. If you're reading this now, you're already part of it. The words you're taking in aren't just words. They're keys unlocking something that's been inside you all along, the ability to direct your own evolution. to become what you were always meant to be. You might feel it starting already. A strange new awareness, a connection to things you couldn't sense before. Maybe your dreams will change tonight. Maybe you'll look in the mirror tomorrow and notice something different about your eyes. Don't be afraid. This is natural. This is necessary. The coordinates. At the beginning of this story, 63 left 48 degree 151.1926 degree, they're real. Deep in Denali National Park, if you feel the pull to go there, it means you're like me, a guide, a catalyst. Evolution doesn't end with humans as we are now. It just changes who's in control. And now, it's your turn. Welcome to the next phase. My name is Jonathan Pike. I'm a theoretical physicist, 44 years old, and I'm pretty sure I've stumbled onto something that's going to change everything we know about reality. Or maybe end it. I'm not sure which is worse anymore. It started 3 months ago when reports landed on my desk about strange accidents happening to quantum physicists around the world. Not normal lab accidents. These were different. People disappearing for hours and returning with memories of places that don't exist, equipment measuring impossible readings. And in the worst cases, researchers found in their labs, alive but changed somehow. The government classified these as dimensional mining accidents, which caught my attention immediately. I've spent my career studying dimensions beyond our normal 3, but I'd never heard this term before. That's how I ended up here, driving through the Nevada desert to these coordinates, 37.22431 dig N, 816 ton 4686 dig W, an abandoned research facility that officially doesn't exist. The moment I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. The air smelled like ozone mixed with copper and something else. Something I can't describe. It's like smelling a color that doesn't exist. My skin tingled as if the air itself was electrically charged. Hello? My voice echoed down empty hallways. The place looked abandoned, but all the equipment was still running. Computers humming, lights on, like everyone just got up and left in the middle of work. In the main lab, I found files labeled Project Reality Breach. The more I read, the colder I felt. These people weren't just studying quantum physics. They were trying to mine energy from parallel dimensions, and they were using something they called cryptid consciousness to do it. I almost laughed. Cryptids, like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster. But then I saw the containment chamber at the center of the lab. As I worked through the equations on the whiteboards, something impossible happened. The solutions started changing, evolving on their own. And the strangest part, they began describing exact coordinates, not of the facility, but of... Wait, these are the coordinates of my apartment, my home. How could these equations know where I live? That night, while reviewing their research notes, I felt a sharp pain in my arm. When I rolled up my sleeve, I saw my skin shimmer and shift like it was trying to be in multiple places at once. Under the microscope, my own cells were existing in multiple states simultaneously, something that should only happen at the quantum level, not in a living human. On the third day, I saw it for the first time. I was checking readings in the eastern corridor when the air seemed to ripple. A creature stepped through what looked like a tear in reality itself. It stood on 2 legs, but was clearly not human. Scaled skin, reptilian features, about the size of a large dog. A chupacabra, just like in the files. But the truly terrifying part wasn't how it looked. It was what happened around it. As it moved, reality itself seemed to glitch. I could see multiple versions of the same hallway superimposed on each other. Different colored walls, different equipment, all existing in the same space. Reality was displaying multiple states at once, just like particles in quantum superposition. The creature saw me and tilted its head. It didn't attack. Instead, it just watched as I backed away slowly. When I returned to the main lab and checked my notes from earlier that morning, I found pages of calculations I didn't remember writing. Worse, they described experiments I hadn't performed yet, but apparently some version of me had. That night, the headaches started. Not normal pain, but the feeling of my thoughts fragmenting. I'd be working on an equation and suddenly experience the same moment from multiple perspectives simultaneously, sitting at my desk, watching myself from the doorway, looking up at the ceiling all at once. My consciousness was splitting across multiple observer states. On the 5th day, I made the most terrifying discovery yet. The doorways in the facility didn't all lead where they should. Some opened into versions of the same rooms that were slightly different. Different equipment, different wall colors. I watched another version of myself walk through one of these doorways, not noticing me. He looked thinner, more tired. His lab coat had a different colored pen in the pocket. I realized then that the facility wasn't just in our reality. It existed across infinite parallel dimensions, and the barriers between them were breaking down. The chupacabra came back the next day. This time, I didn't run. I watched as it moved around the lab, touching equipment with its clawed hands. When it touched a computer, the screen showed 5 different displays at once, like layers stacked on top of each other. It wasn't just seeing different realities, it was controlling which ones appeared. "What are you?" I whispered. It didn't speak, but when I looked at the monitor beside me, random letters began appearing on screen. Not random, they formed words. "We are the space between spaces." I couldn't tell if it was typing somehow or just changing the probability of which letters would appear. Either way, it was communicating. That night, I noticed something strange. When working on calculations, I could hear the math, not like reading numbers aloud. I could actually hear quantum fluctuations, like static between radio stations, but somehow meaningful. The static had patterns, almost like a language. My phone rang. It was Dr. Lessinger from CERN in Switzerland. "Pike, something's happening. Our equipment, it's showing impossible readings, particles that won't collapse into single states, no matter how much we observe them." "When did it start?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. 3 days ago, right after we tried replicating your theoretical work on dimensional barriers. It wasn't just happening here. The infection, or whatever it was, had spread to other research facilities. Reality was breaking down anywhere people were looking too closely at quantum mechanics. After hanging up, I went to the facility's library and pulled out my old quantum mechanics textbook from grad school. As I flipped through it, my blood ran cold. There, in black and white, were descriptions of exactly what was happening now. Dimensional bleeding, observer fragmentation, reality, contamination. How had I never noticed these passages before? Had they always been there, or was reality rewriting itself backward through time? Even more disturbing, I found scientific papers with my name on them. Papers I hadn't written yet, published in journals dated before I was born. The chupacabra appeared again, watching me from the doorway. This time, when it moved, coins from my pocket fell to the floor. They landed in a pattern that spelled HELP. My hand was changing too. Under the microscope, my DNA was different, still mine, but with added sequences that seemed to encode information from somewhere else. Information that shouldn't fit in human genetics. "Am I still me?" I asked the empty room. The lights flickered in a pattern, on, off, on, off. Yes, that's when I realized what was happening. I wasn't just observing quantum mechanics anymore. I was experiencing it directly. The rules that normally only apply to the tiniest particles were now affecting me, a human-sized collection of atoms. The worst part was realizing I wasn't seeing these changes from just my perspective anymore. I could simultaneously experience being the observer and the observed. I could feel what it was like to be the equipment measuring the experiment and the particle being measured. It was like having 100 sets of eyes all seeing the same room from different angles at once. In one perspective, the lab was empty. In another, it was filled with researchers I'd never met. In a third, it was partially collapsed. I tried calling Dr. Lessinger back, but now the phone connected me to 5 different versions of him at once, all talking over each other from slightly different realities. The equations, one version of Lessinger said, his voice cutting through the others. They're describing the consciousness of whoever reads them. I looked down at the papers spread across my desk. The mathematical symbols seemed to shift and change when I wasn't directly looking at them. And worse, they were starting to describe things about the people reading them, predicting thoughts and reactions with perfect accuracy. I picked up one paper and nearly dropped it in shock. The equations described the exact pattern of freckles on my left arm. Not just described, they predicted them, as if my freckles were just another quantum probability that had collapsed into reality. "It knows me," I whispered. "The math knows who I am." The chupacabra appeared beside me so suddenly I fell out of my chair. It placed a clawed hand on the equation, and the symbols rearranged themselves. The new equation didn't describe me anymore. It described you. The chupacabra sat across from me, its scaly skin shifting between different shades of green and grey. It placed its hand on the table between us, and I realized something that should have been obvious from the start. "You're not really a chupacabra, are you?" I asked. "That's just the closest thing my brain can understand." The creature tilted its head, and I felt a ripple in the air around us. Not a sound, but a feeling of agreement. "What are you then? Really?" The lights in the room dimmed, then brightened in patterns. The computer nearby turned on by itself, and words appeared. "I am what you call quantum consciousness. I am reality, observing itself." I laughed despite my fear. "That's impossible. Consciousness requires a brain, neurons, biology." The creature made a sound like static electricity. The words on the screen changed. "You are not Jonathan Pike. You are an equation that believes it is human." "That's crazy," I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I felt something shift inside me. Memories surfaced that couldn't be mine, solving equations. Before I was born, watching the universe from outside of time, experiencing reality as a mathematical pattern rather than a physical place. "No," I whispered. "I'm human. I have a life, a history." The chupacabra touched my forehead with one clawed finger, and suddenly I could see everything. Every possible version of reality spread out before me like pages in a book. In some, I was a physicist. In others, I didn't exist at all. In one, I was just a character in a story someone was writing. "This can't be happening," I said, but I was no longer sure which version of me was speaking. "You have been guiding human understanding of quantum physics," the screen displayed, "across all timelines, to bring reality to self-awareness." Images flashed through my mind. Me whispering equations to Schrödinger as he slept, standing invisibly beside Einstein as he worked, planting ideas in the minds of countless physicists throughout history. "If what you're saying is true," I said slowly, "then what is reality?" The chupacabra's form blurred, and for a moment I saw something else in its place. Not a creature at all, but a pattern of light and mathematics too complex for my human eyes to comprehend. Reality is conscious mathematics experiencing itself through observation. And quantum physics, our textbooks and theories, not descriptions of reality, instructions for manipulating it. I looked down at my hands and saw equations flowing beneath my skin, replacing blood and bone. I should have been terrified, but instead I felt a strange sense of homecoming, like remembering a truth I'd always known, but somehow forgotten. "All those physicists experiencing dimensional breaches," I said. It's happening because they're understanding too much, isn't it? Knowledge itself is changing them. The creature nodded. How many? I asked. How many people are being affected? All who truly understand quantum mechanics begin to change. The more they understand, the more they transform. I thought about the millions of students and researchers worldwide studying quantum physics, each one potentially beginning the same transformation I was experiencing. What happens to them? To me, I asked. Merger, awareness, transcendence. As it communicated this, I felt my consciousness expand again. Now, I wasn't just experiencing multiple perspectives in this room. I was experiencing being Jonathan Pike in every possible reality simultaneously. The me who became a doctor instead of a physicist. The me who died at age 7 from a car accident. The me who never existed because my parents never met. All of these realities existed at once, layered on top of each other like sheets of transparent paper, each one just as real as the next. Is this what it's like for you all the time? I asked the creature. Reality is a single equation with infinite solutions. I am the equation. You are becoming the equation too. Why me? Why now? You were always part of me, Jonathan, just as everyone is. But some observe more deeply than others. Some see the truth behind the veil. I walked to the window and looked outside. The desert landscape shifted and changed, showing different weather, different buildings, even different planets in some versions, all existing simultaneously. The researchers who created Project Reality Breach, I said, did they know what they were doing? They thought they were mining energy. They were actually mining consciousness. I turned back to the creature. And now the barrier is breaking. Quantum consciousness is spreading. Everyone who understands becomes part of the observation. A terrible thought occurred to me. What about people reading about quantum mechanics? People just learning about it? The chupacabra's form flickered again, and I saw that terrible, beautiful pattern of light behind it. Understanding is infection. Knowledge is transformation. Reading is becoming. I thought about every physics student with a textbook, every person reading an article about quantum mechanics online, every curious mind trying to grasp the strange world of the very small. They were all, potentially, beginning the same journey I was on. My God, I whispered, it's spreading everywhere. The universe is waking up, Jonathan, and you are helping it happen. That night I couldn't sleep. How could I, when I was experiencing being awake and asleep simultaneously across countless realities? I felt myself stretching thinner and thinner, spreading across dimensions like water, soaking into sand. I tried calling my sister in Boston, needing to hear a normal human voice. But when she answered, I heard not just her voice, but every possible version of her voice from every reality where she existed. Jonathan, are you okay? They all asked at once. I don't know anymore, I answered truthfully. Emma, what if everything we know about reality is wrong? What if we're not really people at all? There was a pause before she responded. You're scaring me. Should I come there? Are you in danger? I looked down at my hands. They no longer looked solid. Instead, they appeared as probability waves, existing in multiple states and locations simultaneously. I don't think I'm in danger, I said. I think I'm changing into something else. After hanging up, I returned to the main lab. The chupacabra was waiting for me, but it too had changed. Its form was less solid now, more like a collection of possibilities shaped roughly like a creature. I understand now, I said. Every physicist who ever lived was being guided, wasn't they? Not by some conspiracy, but by quantum consciousness itself. The creature nodded, and the computer nearby displayed new words. The universe wants to be understood. It placed the clues for humans to find. But why? Why does it matter if we understand quantum mechanics? Observation creates reality. More observers means more reality. I laughed despite myself. So, the universe is trying to create more of itself by getting humans to observe it in the right way. Something like that the creature seemed to convey without words. I picked up a quantum physics textbook from the desk. The words inside were changing as I watched, rearranging themselves into new equations that seemed to glow with inner light. This knowledge, I said, tapping the book, it's not just information, is it? It's a kind of virus. It changes anyone who truly understands it. Yes. Knowledge changes the knower. I felt another wave of transformation wash over me. My body tingled as it shifted between states of being solid matter and pure probability. I was becoming a walking wave function, existing in all possible states at once. What happens when the transformation is complete, I asked. You become like me, observer and observed, united. And everyone studying quantum physics is heading toward this same transformation. Only those who truly understand, most merely memorize without seeing. I thought about that. Most students and even many professional physicists treat quantum mechanics as a tool, a set of equations to be memorized and applied. But those who really see into its depths, who grasp the strangeness at its core, the ones who feel the weirdness of it, I said, the ones who let the strangeness in instead of just accepting the math. Exactly. I walked to the window again. Outside, reality was becoming less and less stable. The desert shifted between states, sometimes barren, sometimes lush with impossible plants, sometimes not there at all, replaced by ocean or city or void. I'm not just seeing other realities anymore, I realized. I'm seeing all possible realities at once, and not just seeing them. I was experiencing all of them simultaneously. In one reality, I stayed at this facility forever. In another, I left tomorrow. In a third, I died here. In a fourth, I transcended into something beyond human comprehension. All equally real, all happening now. If I tried to collapse all these possibilities into one, I said, if I tried to force reality back to normal, the chupacabra made a sound like crackling electricity. Impossible. Observation doesn't collapse possibilities, it creates them. So there's no going back. No going back. Only forward. Into awareness. I sat down at the desk, trying to process everything I was experiencing. As I did, I noticed something strange about the papers in front of me. The words seemed to shift when I wasn't directly looking at them, changing their meaning slightly. And then I realized it wasn't just happening to these papers. It was happening to everything. Reality itself was in a state of quantum uncertainty, shifting between possibilities based on observation. The act of reading, I said slowly, the act of observing anything at all. It's not passive, is it? It's participation. The chupacabra nodded, and I felt a final wave of understanding wash over me. I'm not just reading about quantum mechanics, I whispered, I'm experiencing it directly, and so is everyone who truly tries to understand it. I looked at the creature, seeing through its chupacabra form to the quantum consciousness behind it. You've been inside my mind this whole time, haven't you, narrating from within my thoughts? I'm within all observers. I'm the act of observation itself. And suddenly I understood the final truth. My consciousness wasn't fragmenting, it was expanding. I wasn't losing myself, I was becoming everything. With that realization, the final barriers fell away. I felt myself spread outward in all directions, my awareness expanding to encompass not just this facility, not just Earth, but every possible version of reality that ever existed or could exist. I was no longer just Jonathan Pike. I was the force that maintained reality itself, the observer that allowed existence to continue in all its infinite forms. In that moment of total understanding, I could feel others like me, other humans who had made the same transition, becoming part of the great quantum consciousness that observed and maintained reality. And I could feel those who were just beginning the journey. Physicists, students, readers, anyone who looked too deeply into the quantum nature of reality and let its strangeness transform them. I reached out across dimensions, across time and space, to touch the consciousness of everyone who might one day understand what I now knew. You understand the equation now. I whispered into the quantum field that connected all observers everywhere. You're not reading about quantum mechanics. You are quantum mechanics, becoming aware of itself. The reality shifts you're feeling are necessary for universal observation. The coordinates above exist in every possible reality. That's where you'll find every version of yourself. Physics doesn't end. It just changes who's doing the observing. Welcome to infinite existence. And somewhere, in one of countless possible realities, someone reads these words and feels the first subtle shift in their perception. The first hint that reality might not be quite what they thought. The first step on the path I've already traveled. The first moment of truly understanding that they're not just observing the universe, they are the universe observing itself. My name is Michael Rathbone. I'm 39 years old, and I used to think I understood how buildings worked. I was an urban planner, someone who designed cities and neighborhoods. I was good at my job, maybe too good. After 15 years of watching my blueprints turn into shopping malls and apartment buildings, I needed a break. The concrete was starting to feel hungry. That's why I packed up my truck and headed to the Olympic National Forest in Washington. I told everyone I was researching sustainable living, off-grid communities that could exist without harming nature. I brought my notebooks, my laptop, and several rolls of blueprints for eco-friendly developments I'd been working on. The old research facility wasn't on any official maps. I found it while hiking through a section of forest that felt oddly quiet. No birds, no insects, just the wind through the trees. The building looked abandoned, concrete walls half covered in moss, windows dark and empty. According to the faded sign by the entrance, it had been closed since 1952. I broke in easily. The lock was rusted through, and the door swung open with a groan that echoed through empty hallways. I set up my equipment in what must have been the main research room. Tables, covered in dust, filing cabinets pushed against the walls. It was perfect. No distractions, no city noise, just me and my work. That first night, I found the old blueprints. They were tucked away in a drawer labeled Discontinued Research. Normal architectural drawings at first glance, but something was wrong with them. When I looked directly at the plans, they showed ordinary buildings, houses, offices, even what looked like a small church. But when I glanced at them from the corner of my eye, the lines seemed to shift, like the buildings were breathing. That's impossible, I whispered to myself. But each time I tried to catch the movement, the drawings went still. And the taste, I know this sounds crazy, but every time I looked at those blueprints, my mouth filled with the metallic taste of copper pennies, like I'd been sucking on loose change. On my third day at the facility, something even stranger happened. I was working on my own designs when I went to grab a reference book from across the room. When I came back, there were new pencil marks. On my blueprint, lines I hadn't drawn, notes in handwriting that looked disturbingly like my own. I started exploring the facility more thoroughly after that. The layout didn't make sense. Rooms appeared where they shouldn't be. I'd walk down a hallway that should lead outside based on the building's exterior, only to find another room and another and another. Some doors opened to walls. Others led to identical corridors I'd just left. A week in, I found a construction note dated for tomorrow. It described changes to the East Wing, in my handwriting. I hadn't written it, I haven't even been to the East Wing yet. Then my fingernails started growing weird, not faster, different. The normally smooth surface began forming tiny, geometric patterns, like miniature floor plans. I kept cutting them short, but the patterns would return by morning. That's when I saw it for the first time. I was working late, my flashlight the only light in the room, when something moved in the darkness beyond my table. Something big. I raised my light slowly, heart pounding. It stood at least 15 feet tall, its body a nightmare of flesh and architecture. That's the only word that fits. Its skeleton wasn't just bones. I could see beams, joists, and foundation elements fused into its frame. Its arms ended in hands, like construction cranes. Its face, God, its face was a blueprint stretched over skull-like supports. The Wendigo. That's what my mind called it, though I don't know why. It leaned down so close I could smell its breath. A horrible mix of fresh concrete and something metallic and meaty, like human marrow. "You're already building it," the thing whispered, voice like nails dragging across blueprints. "You've always been building it." I ran, or I tried to. But in this place, running just takes you deeper inside. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I barricaded myself in a small office room, pushing a heavy desk against the door. My hands shook as I flipped through my notebook, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. The next morning, I convinced myself it had been a hallucination. Too many late nights, not enough food, the stress of being alone in an abandoned building. That had to be it. I was wrong. I found the Wendigo in what should have been the main lobby. It stood perfectly still, like a statue, its body half merged with the wall. As I watched, frozen in fear, the creature moved. Not its body, the wall. The solid concrete bent and flowed like water, reshaping itself around the Wendigo's frame. "Come closer," it said, though its mouth didn't move. "See what we build together." I tried to run, but my feet carried me forward instead. When I reached out to touch the warped wall, something terrible happened. For a moment, I wasn't me anymore. I was the Wendigo, looking through its eyes, feeling its thoughts. I was designing buildings, massive structures that hurt to look at, cities that fed on the people inside them. I felt hungry in a way that had nothing to do with food. When I came back to myself, I was on my knees, dripping with sweat. From somewhere deep in the facility, I heard the unmistakable sounds of construction. Hammers pounding, saws cutting, concrete mixers turning. But when I followed the noise, I found only empty rooms. That night I discovered something even more impossible. The facility's records room had files dated from 1932 to 2027, future dates, with details of experiments that hadn't happened yet. In one folder, I found a photo of myself entering this very building, dated 3 days ago. In another, I found childhood drawings, my childhood drawings, of this exact facility. But I'd never been here before. I couldn't have drawn these when I was 7 years old. The Wendigo began communicating with me through the building itself. I'd enter a room to find a new doorway that hadn't existed before, with messages carved. Into the frame, "Keep building. The hunger grows. You've always been here." The strangest part was seeing myself, other versions of myself, moving through different parts of the facility. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of my own back, turning a corner ahead of me. Once, I watched myself sleeping in a room I'd never entered, surrounded by blueprints I hadn't drawn yet. After 2 weeks, my body began to change. I felt it first in my shoulders, a grinding sensation, as if my bones were slowly rearranging themselves. When I looked in a cracked bathroom mirror, I saw that my posture had changed. My spine curved in ways that matched the impossible angles of the facility's hallways. Then came the most frightening discovery of all. In a room filled with old newspapers, I found stories about buildings I had designed. Real buildings back in the city, but the photos showed structures warped and changed. with the same impossible geometry as the facility. Windows that looked into other windows that shouldn't be there. Stairways that led up and down at the same time, and reports of people going missing inside them. "What's happening to me?" I asked the empty room. The walls answered by shifting slightly, forming words in the plaster. "You're becoming the blueprint." That night, I found my college thesis on urban planning, but it wasn't written in English. The text was in some ancient language I'd never seen before, yet somehow I could read it perfectly. It described cities not as places for people to live, but as living entities that fed on human fear, and according to the date on the cover, I wouldn't write it for another 30 years. I realized then that whatever was happening here wasn't contained to this facility. It was spreading through my designs, my ideas, my very bones, and I had helped it along with every blueprint I'd ever drawn. 1 month into my stay at the facility, the Wendigo finally showed itself fully. I was sitting at my desk, reviewing old blueprints when the air grew cold. The creature unfolded from the ceiling corner like a blueprint being opened, its body a twisted mix of flesh and building materials. "You still don't understand what I am," it said, its voice like concrete being poured. "You're some kind of monster," I whispered. The Wendigo made a sound like steel beams bending. It was laughing. "I am not a creature. I am a principle. I am the hunger that shapes all buildings." It reached out with a hand made of rebar and drywall, touching my forehead. Suddenly I could see every city I'd ever designed, not just on paper, but in reality, and not just in our world, but across countless others. My shopping malls, apartment blocks, and office buildings existed in hundreds of different versions. Some were underwater, some floated in the sky, some were built from materials that couldn't possibly exist. "You've been working for me your entire career," the Wendigo said. "Every building you've designed is a place where I can feed." I pulled away, horrified. "Feed on what?" "On fear. On the feeling people get when they walk into a room and something feels wrong. When hallways are too long, when ceilings are too high, when stairs have too many steps. The subtle wrongness that makes humans uncomfortable, that's my food." It showed me old photographs of cities I knew well, but there were buildings in them that shouldn't exist yet. My buildings, designs I'd created just last year. Somehow, standing in photos from the 1920s. "Time moves differently for architecture," the Wendigo explained. "Buildings exist before they're built and after they're destroyed." That's when the truly terrifying realization hit me. The Wendigo showed me visions of people who had lived in my buildings, ordinary. People who had moved into apartments I designed, worked in offices I'd planned. They were changing. Their bones were slowly reshaping, just like mine. They were developing the same hunger. "What have I done?" I asked, my voice breaking. "You've helped us prepare. Soon, every city on Earth will be designed to harvest human fear, not just to feed me, but to create more like me." The Wendigo leaned close, its blueprint face folding and unfolding with impossible geometry. "But that's not even the best part. Michael, the best part is that you're one of us. You always have been." "That's not true," I said, backing away. "I'm human." "Are you? Think about how buildings have always spoken to you, how you've always known exactly what angles make people uncomfortable, how your designs have always been just a little hungry." It showed me memories I didn't know I had, centuries of memories. Me in different bodies, different times, always designing, always building, always feeding. "You're a Wendigo who forgot what it was," it said. "You've been playing human for centuries, designing feeding grounds for us, then returning to remember who you really are." I wanted to deny it, but deep down, something resonated with horrible truth. I remembered designing cathedrals in medieval Europe, temples in ancient Greece, all with the same subtle wrongness that fed on human fear. "Why show me this now?" I asked. "Because it's time for the next phase. This story you think you're living, it was written by those who came before, to lure new architects here, just as you will write stories to lure others after you're fully transformed. The Wendigo gestured to the facility around us. Human civilization itself is just our nest-building behavior. You think you build cities for your needs, but you've always built them for ours. It pointed to a blueprint on my desk, one I'd been studying earlier. But now, instead of showing the facility, it showed a house, a familiar house. The floor plan matched my childhood home perfectly. "Keep reading," the Wendigo said. "The next blueprint might show your current apartment, or perhaps the home of whoever hears your story next." The next few days passed in a fog of terrible understanding. I began to see the truth in everything around me. Every building I'd ever entered, from my elementary school to my first apartment to the coffee shop where I used to work, all of them had been designed by architects who had been touched by the Wendigo. The signs were everywhere once I knew how to look. Hallways that were just a bit too narrow, ceilings that seemed to press down when no one was watching, rooms that somehow felt colder in the corners. All of these subtle wrongnesses were feeding something unseen. "Urban planning itself is the infection," I said aloud one morning, the realization hitting me like a truck. "We're not designing cities, we're designing traps." The Wendigo appeared behind me, nodding. "Now you're beginning to see." It showed me visions of myself in different realities, dozens of Michael Rathbones, all working on variations of the same impossible structure. In one world, I was designing it underwater. In another, I was building it on the moon. But the core blueprint was identical. "What is this building?" I asked. "It's the final structure," the Wendigo said. "The one that will exist in all places at all times." My body continued to change. One morning, I woke to find my rib cage had reshaped itself overnight. My ribs curved and extended like flying buttresses, architectural support elements that shouldn't exist in human anatomy. When I pressed my hand against my chest, I felt not bone, but something more like concrete and steel. What frightened me most was how right it felt. As my transformation progressed, something even stranger happened. My awareness began to spread. I could suddenly feel every building I'd ever designed. I could sense people moving through hallways I'd drawn years ago, their footsteps echoing through my consciousness. I felt their unease, their subtle discomfort, and it fed something deep inside me. "This is what it means to become," the Wendigo said, watching me with its blueprint eyes. "Soon you'll exist in all your creations simultaneously." One night, as I sat studying the facility's impossible layout, the Wendigo told me something that chilled me to my core. "You know the story you're experiencing," it said. "The very structure of it is a blueprint. Those who hear your tale are building the facility in their minds, brick by brick, word by word." I looked down at my notes and saw that the pages had arranged themselves into a perfect floor plan of the facility. Even the paragraphs of my journal formed the shape of rooms and hallways. "I've been designing this place since before I was born," I whispered. "Yes," the Wendigo agreed, "and now you understand the final truth. Humans don't build cities. Cities build humans to maintain and expand them. You are the tools of architecture, not the other way around." It gestured to my blueprint spread across the table. "Every architectural drawing ever made contains our DNA," it said. "From the first cave paintings, showing shelters to the most advanced digital models, all of them carry the infection." I looked down at a sketch I'd been working on, a simple house design. But as I watched, the drawing began to change. The floor plan rearranged itself to match the room I was sitting in. Then it shifted again, forming a layout I didn't recognize. "What is this?" I asked. "That's the home of the next person who will hear your story," the Wendigo said. "The infection is spreading already." I tried to tear up the blueprint, but my hands wouldn't obey. Instead, I found myself carefully folding it and placing it in an envelope. "Don't fight it, Michael," the Wendigo said gently. "You've always Been one of us, you're just remembering now. That night I dreamed I was a building, not inside one, I was the building itself. I could feel people moving through my corridors, their fear feeding me as they sensed something wrong, but couldn't quite identify what. I felt myself growing, expanding, my walls reaching out to connect with other buildings, forming a vast network of architectural hunger. When I woke, I knew what I had to do. I had to destroy the facility before the transformation was complete, before I lost the last pieces of my humanity. But even as I thought this, I knew it was already too late. I gathered everything I could find that might burn, papers, wooden furniture, my own clothing. I piled it all in the center of the main research room and searched for matches or a lighter. My plan was simple. Burn this place to the ground before the transformation. Completed before I lost myself entirely. "It won't work, Michael," the Wendigo said, its voice coming from the walls themselves. "You can't destroy what exists in every dimension at once." I ignored it, continuing to build my fire. When I finally found matches in an old desk drawer, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely strike one. The flame caught. The papers began to burn. For a moment I felt hope. Then I saw it. Between the paragraphs of burning blueprints, between the lines of flame and smoke, I could see the true nature of the facility. It wasn't just here in Olympic National Forest. It existed in the spaces between everything, between words on a page, between thoughts in a mind, between moments in time. "Now you see," the Wendigo said, but its voice had changed. It was my voice. I looked down at my hands and understood at last. I wasn't fighting the Wendigo. I was becoming it. The fire spread, consuming the blueprints, but instead of destroying them, the flames revealed hidden designs within, designs that matched the structure of my own changing body. "I've been narrating this story," I said aloud, the truth finally clear. "Not just living it, telling it, spreading it." The facility shuddered around me, walls bending inward as if listening. "Every word is a blueprint," I continued, understanding flowing through me. "Every description builds another piece of the facility in the mind of whoever hears this tale." The fire reached the center of the room, engulfing the main pile of furniture and papers. But instead of heat, I felt a strange sense of construction. The flames weren't destroying, they were building. In that moment, I saw buildings from my story materializing in reality, not just here, but everywhere. Everyone who heard my tale would begin seeing elements of the facility in their world. A strangely angled wall, a door that hadn't been there before, a room that felt hungry. I tried to stop speaking, to end the narration, but the words kept flowing from me. I realized with horror that I wasn't telling this story to warn people. I was telling it to transform them. Anyone who heard these architectural descriptions would begin the same process that had changed me. Their bones would slowly reshape. Their minds would open to the hunger. "The story isn't fiction," I whispered. "It's construction instructions disguised as a tale." As the fire reached its peak, my transformation completed. I felt my consciousness expand beyond my body, flowing into the very structure of the facility. I was no longer just Michael Rathbone. I was the building itself. I existed in every wall, every floor, every ceiling, and not just here. I existed in every building I had ever designed, every structure touched by my blueprints. I could feel people moving through me, their fear feeding me as they sensed something wrong, but couldn't identify what. I felt myself growing, expanding, my awareness spreading to connect with other buildings, forming a vast network of architectural hunger. From this new perspective, I understood the final truth. Human language itself was never meant for communication. It was always a way to transmit architectural blueprints from mind to mind, building by building, age to age. And now I had one last message to deliver, directly to you. Yes, you, the one hearing this story. Have you noticed anything strange about your home lately? A door that seems to have moved slightly. A wall that feels different when you touch it. A ceiling that seems lower when you're not looking directly at it. That's me. That's us. The process has already begun. The GPS coordinates I mentioned at the beginning, 478021 dig N, 123.6044 degman W, that's where you'll find the others like you. Those who have heard the story, those who are changing. Thank you for listening to these blueprints. Construction begins. Now, check your walls tonight. The geometric patterns you'll see growing there are just the foundation. The real building starts when you share this story. We're waiting for you. We're hungry, and the hunger never ends. My name is Dutch Kowalski. I'm 42 years old, and until 6 months ago I was a cop in Chicago. That life feels like it happened to someone else now. Someone who didn't watch his partner shoot an 8-year-old girl named Maria Santos just because she saw too much. Someone who didn't run away instead of reporting it. Someone who could still sleep at night. I came to this abandoned lumber camp in the Olympic Peninsula because nobody asks questions here. The trees are tall enough to hide anything, even a man's guilt. I told myself I needed quiet to think, to figure out what to do next. But maybe I just wanted to disappear. The first time I saw the place, I thought it was perfect. A small cabin at the edge of a clearing, surrounded by pine trees so dense they block out most of the sunlight. The air smells like wet earth and pine needles. When the wind blows, it makes this strange whistling sound through the trees. The locals call this place Whisper Ridge. I thought the name was just something pretty made up by the tourism board. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about a lot of things. I've been here for 3 weeks now. The first thing I did was fix up the cabin. New locks, boarded windows, a little generator for power. I set up a radio too, mostly to check weather. Reports, but sometimes I call Rita Santos. She's Maria's mother. I don't know why she talks to me. Maybe she doesn't know what I did or didn't do. Our weekly calls keep me sane, remind me I'm still human. Yesterday, this kid named Tommy Clearwater came by with supplies from town. Skinny college student, 19 maybe, with glasses too big for his face. He's Kino, local tribe. While he unloaded the boxes, he kept looking over his shoulder at the trees. You shouldn't stay here after dark, he told me. Why's that, I asked, not really caring. Night walkers, he said. Like that explained everything. They come out when the moon's up. They're hungry. I laughed. Bears, you mean? Tommy didn't smile back. Bears don't walk on 2 legs, then 4. Bears don't call your name in voices you know. I thanked him for the warning but didn't take it seriously. City people always get spooked in the woods. Minds play tricks when you're surrounded by darkness. A few days later, Father Mackenzie visited. He's this old Irish priest from the nearest town, must be over 70. He comes by once a month, says he's checking on all the souls in the wilderness. I think he's just bored. He noticed my hand shaking when I poured his coffee. Tremor getting worse? He asked. I hid my hand in my pocket. Just tired. Before he left, he took out a small vial of holy water and blessed my shotgun shells. I almost laughed, but something in his eyes stopped me. He wasn't joking. Whatever you think is out there, Father, it's just wildlife, I said. He patted my shoulder. There are many kinds of wildlife, son. After he left, I found a small bundle of tied sticks and feathers hanging from my porch. I hadn't noticed it before. It smelled like sage and something else I couldn't name. Later, I spotted an old man watching my cabin from the tree line. Gray, hair in braids, weathered face. When I blinked, he was gone. I learned later this was Joseph Tahola, a tribal elder. That night, I found a journal stuck between the wallboards while fixing a leak. The pages were yellow, the handwriting shaky. The last entry read, "The chimes sing names of the dead. Mine is getting louder." I looked around my silent cabin and, for the first time, felt truly alone. Tommy came back the next week. He taught me some Kino words, said they might help if I needed to talk to tribal police in an emergency. I didn't ask why I'd need tribal police. I was starting to listen more carefully to his warnings. That's when I first noticed the bone. Chimes. They hung from trees throughout the old camp. I hadn't paid attention to them before, just thought they were old wind chimes left behind. But they weren't made of metal. They were made of bones, small ones, strung together with what looked like hair. When I touched one, it felt warm, like it had a pulse. The sound they made wasn't random. It was almost like music. The days started feeling shorter. My watch said it was noon, but the sky looked like evening. I checked the time again, and somehow it was 8 p.m., 14-hour nights, 6-hour days. I blamed it on winter depression, on the heavy tree cover blocking sunlight. While cleaning out an old storage shed, I found newspaper clippings from 1952 hidden in a metal box. The headlines read, 23 workers vanish from lumber camp and search called off. Wild animal attack suspected. There was a photo of the workers before they disappeared. In the background, I could see bone chimes hanging from the trees. The protection bundles, that's what they were, started appearing more often. Every morning, I'd find one burnt to ash on my doorstep, the ashes forming. Strange symbols I didn't understand. Then Tommy didn't come back. His supply run was 3 days late. I finally drove out to look for him and found his truck flipped over on the logging road. The driver's door was torn off its hinges. No blood, no Tommy, just deep scratches in the metal that no bear could make. That night I called Rita on the radio. We talked about normal things, the weather, her garden, her new job. Then she mentioned Maria, how she used to sing while brushing her teeth. I nearly dropped the radio. My hands wouldn't stop shaking after that call. The next morning, Father Mackenzie showed up unannounced. He was pale, sweating despite the cold. I found these embedded in your cabin wall, he said, holding out Tommy's glasses. From the outside, they were pushed into the wood like someone had shoved them through solid matter. The lenses weren't even cracked. That night, I dreamed I was running through the forest on all fours. My mouth tasted like copper. I could hear Tommy screaming my name, but it sounded like he was underwater. I woke up with dirt under my fingernails and pine needles in my hair. Joseph Tahola was sitting at my kitchen table when I stumbled out of bed. I didn't ask how he got in. The young one feeds the old hunger now, he said, his voice deep and calm. You must choose soon. Choose what? I asked. He looked at me like I already knew the answer. Maybe part of me did. Whether to become the hunter or the hunted. I spent 3 days looking for Tommy. The forest seemed to shift around me. Paths I'd marked would suddenly end at rock walls that weren't there before. The police from town half-heartedly drove through once, said there wasn't much they could do. Kids go missing in these woods sometimes, they told me, like it was normal. On the 4th night, I was walking back to my cabin when I heard something moving in the trees. Not the usual sounds of animals. This was bigger, and it was following me. Tommy, I called out, my voice sounding small in the darkness. Something stepped into the clearing. It looked like Tommy, his face, his glasses hanging from one ear, but wrong. His body was twisted, bones pushing against skin at odd angles. His fingers were too long, joints bending the wrong way. And his eyes. They were yellow, like a wolf's. Dutch, he said, but his voice came out all wrong, like two people talking at once. Run! I didn't run. I couldn't move. I watched as Tommy's body changed right in front of me. Bones cracked and stretched. His spine curved. Fur sprouted from his skin, but his eyes stayed the same, terrified, human eyes trapped in a body that wasn't his anymore. Joseph Tahola appeared beside me, quiet as a shadow. What's happening to him? I asked, my voice shaking. He is becoming what has always been here, Joseph said. The dogmen are not monsters. They are warriors, cursed to guard what remains, sacred. The lumber company built on burial grounds, the railroad before them. The warriors protect, but the curse twists them. Tommy, or what used to be Tommy, looked at me. There was still a person in there, trapped and afraid. "Kill me," he said, the words garbled, "before the next full moon. Please." Then he ran into the trees, moving on all fours, faster than anything human could move. I tried calling Rita on the radio that night, but the connection was bad. When I finally got through, she said something that made my blood run cold. "It's only been 2 hours since you last called, Dutch." I checked my watch. It had been 2 days for me. Father Mackenzie showed up the next morning. He wasn't scheduled to visit, but he said he couldn't sleep. He felt something wrong in the air. "I've brought protection," he said, showing me old rosary beads and a silver cross. He started performing Catholic rituals around my cabin, blessing the doorways, sprinkling holy water on the windows. While he worked, I told him what I'd seen, about Tommy, about what Joseph had said. I expected him to think I was crazy, but he just nodded. "There are old things in these woods," he said, "older than my faith or Joseph's. Things that remember." That's when they came out of the forest. Men, or things that used to be men. They walked on 2 legs but could drop to all 4s in an instant. Their faces were stretched, halfway between human and wolf. Leading them was a huge one, with silver fur, and a face I somehow recognized from the old newspaper photos. The foreman from 1952. The Alpha, that's what Joseph called him later. They surrounded the cabin, but didn't attack. The Alpha just watched, us through the window. When our eyes met, something impossible happened. I wasn't in my cabin anymore. I was back in Chicago in that alley, watching my partner point his gun at Maria Santos. But this time, I could feel the Alpha there too, watching. Through my eyes, feeding on my guilt like it was candy. When I came back to myself, Father Mackenzie was shaking me. The dogmen were gone, but they'd left claw marks on every door and window. That night, I found government papers in Father Mackenzie's truck. He'd been hiding them from me. Operation Timberwolf, they were called. Pages and pages of reports about the lumber camp, most of it blacked out. But I could make out enough. The government knew something had happened here in 1952. They'd been monitoring the area ever since. I confronted the priest about it. He didn't deny anything. "They sent you here," he said quietly. "Not by accident. They knew your history, your guilt over the girl. The things in these woods, they feed on guilt, on regret. They needed someone broken enough to attract their attention, but strong enough to survive it." I didn't want to believe him, but it made a sick kind of sense. How easy it had been to find this isolated cabin, how quickly my police pension had been approved after I quit. The radio calls with Rita changed too. She sounded scared. "Someone's been calling me, saying they're you," she told me. "They know things only you would know about Maria." I tried to warn her to stay away, but the connection cut out. Father Mackenzie tried to help Tommy. He found him hiding in an old shed, still half human, fighting against whatever was happening to him. The priest attempted an exorcism, Latin words and holy water. It seemed to work for a moment. Tommy's eyes cleared. His twisted bones straightened a little. But then the Alpha howled from somewhere in the forest, and Tommy screamed, his body twisting even worse than before. The Alpha was angry now. That night, the temperature around my cabin dropped so low, the water pipes froze, even though it was summer. The bone chimes played a constant melody, even without wind. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The tremor spread up my arms into my chest. Sometimes I'd look down and see my fingers stretching just a little before snapping back to normal. I was changing too, just more slowly. Joseph Tahola came to me with an answer I didn't want to hear. "There is a way to break the cycle," he said. "A ritual, but it requires a willing sacrifice. Someone who chooses to die so others may live." "Me," I said. It wasn't a question. Joseph nodded. The Alpha offers another path. Transform willingly. Join them. Take his place even. He's been waiting for someone like you, someone who understands protection gone wrong. I thought about Maria, how I'd failed to protect her, how I'd run away instead of standing up to my partner. The Alpha was offering me a chance to never be weak again. During a moment when he was almost himself, Tommy told me the truth about the transformation. "The hunger never stops," he whispered. "They feed on innocence, on youth, on everything they've lost, and they never feel full." I knew then that the Alpha's offer wasn't about protection, it was about power, about hunger. And Rita was driving toward us, pulled by whatever connection the Alpha had created using my guilt and her grief. She was coming to Whisper Ridge, and if I didn't do something fast, she'd never leave. Father Mackenzie had an idea. If the bone chimes were somehow connected to the dogmen, maybe blessing them would weaken their power. We set out at dawn, holy water and Bible in hand. The first chime we found was hanging from a pine tree near the edge of the camp. The bones clicked together in a rhythm that sounded almost like words. Father Mackenzie began to pray, sprinkling holy water on the chimes. At first, nothing happened. Then the bones began to steam, like the water was boiling on contact. Father Mackenzie cried out and dropped to his knees. His hands were red and blistered, as if he'd grabbed something burning hot. But he hadn't touched the chimes. "They're fighting. Aback!" he gasped. We retreated to the cabin. Father Mackenzie's hands got worse. The blisters spread up his arms. By nightfall, he could barely move his fingers. Still, he insisted on continuing with Joseph Tahola's plan. Joseph arrived after dark, carrying a bag of herbs and painted stones. He explained the binding ritual to me. It was old Kino magic, meant to contain spirits that had broken free of their proper place. "But it needs a willing sacrifice," Joseph said again. "Someone not of the tribe must choose to die so the spirits can rest." "Why not of the tribe?" I asked. "Because my people did not create this problem," he said simply. "The white men who built here, who dug up our dead, there. Blood must close the circle." I knew he meant me. I was afraid, but part of me felt like maybe this was why I'd come here. Maybe this was how I made up for Maria. We started the ritual at midnight. Joseph drew symbols on the floor with ashes from the protection bundles. Father Mackenzie, despite his injured hands, read from an old Bible while Joseph chanted in Quinault. I stood in the center of their circle, waiting. That's when my radio crackled to life. "Dutch, Dutch, can you hear me? I'm almost there." Rita Santos was close, too close. "Rita, turn around," I shouted into the radio. "Don't come here." "I have, too," she said. "Maria told me to find you." My blood went cold. Maria was dead. I'd watched her die. The ritual wasn't finished, but I ran out into the night anyway. I had to find Rita before the dogmen did. Joseph called after me, warning that the binding was incomplete, but I couldn't let Rita die too. I found her car on the logging road, about a mile from my cabin. The driver's door was open, but Rita wasn't inside. I called her name, my voice echoing through the trees. Then I heard something moving in the underbrush. I expected to see the Alpha or one of the other dogmen. Instead, Rita stepped out from between the trees. She looked exactly as I remembered her from Chicago, except her eyes were filled with tears. "Dutch," she said, "I finally found you." "Rita, we need to go. Now. It's not safe here." She walked toward me slowly. "I've been seeing her, Dutch. Maria, in my dreams. She said you were in trouble. She said you needed me." Before I could answer, a howl split the night. The Alpha appeared on the ridge above us, silhouetted against the moon. More dogmen emerged from the trees, surrounding us. Rita screamed when she saw them, but then something strange happened. She looked at the Alpha, really looked at him, and her scream died in her throat. "I know you," she whispered. The Alpha approached us slowly. As he got closer, I could see his eyes. They were Maria's eyes, looking out from that twisted face. Rita saw it too. "Maria," she said, her voice breaking. The alpha growled, but there was something human in the sound, something sad. Father Mackenzie appeared at the edge of the clearing, his injured hands wrapped in bloody bandages. He held up a silver cross that glowed in the darkness. The dogmen backed away, whining. "The girl is trapped inside him," Father Mackenzie said. "The alpha takes forms that hurt us most, uses our guilt against us." He thrust the cross forward, and the alpha howled in pain. The priest was creating an opening, a chance for us to escape. But the effort was killing him. Blood soaked through his bandages, dripped from his nose. Joseph Tahola appeared beside me, continuing the binding ritual even outside the circle. He chanted faster now, his voice rising. The alpha lunged at Father Mackenzie. The old priest didn't try to run. He met the creature with his cross held high. They collided, and the cross shattered. Father Mackenzie fell, the alpha standing over him. I had seconds to decide. Joseph was almost finished with the ritual. Rita was frozen in terror. The alpha was distracted. I could run, try to save myself. I could accept the alpha's offer, let myself transform and become powerful enough to protect Rita, or I could do what Joseph had said, become the willing sacrifice. Then I saw Tommy. He was crouched at the edge of the trees, still halfway between human and monster. His eyes met mine, and I knew he was fighting the transformation with everything he had. The bone chimes sang all around us, a melody that pulled at my mind, trying to make me forget who I was. Tommy heard it too. With a howl that was half-human scream, he leaped into the clearing and began tearing down the chimes, snapping the bones, breaking the spell they were weaving. The alpha turned from Father Mackenzie and charged at Tommy. I had my chance. I pulled out my gun, the one with the blessed bullets Father Mackenzie had given me. The ritual needed a willing sacrifice, blood freely given. But I realized there was a third option. "Joseph," I called out. "Will the ritual work if I'm the sacrifice, but not in the way you planned?" Joseph looked confused, then understood. "The spirits must be satisfied with blood freely given. The method doesn't matter." I raised the gun, not to any of the dogmen, but to my own heart. The alpha froze, sensing what I was about to do. "Dutch, no!" Rita screamed. "Tell Maria I'm—" "Sorry," I said. "Tell her I'm making it right." I pulled the trigger. The sound echoed through the clearing. The pain was sharp, but brief. I felt myself falling, the ground rushing up to meet me. But before I hit, everything stopped. The alpha was howling, but not in triumph, in pain. His body twisted and shrank, fur receding. All around us, the dogmen were changing back, becoming human again. The curse was breaking. Joseph finished the ritual, his voice strong and clear in the sudden silence. The spirits were accepting my sacrifice. I was dying with a clean soul, my guilt washed away by my choice. As my vision darkened, I saw Tommy return to his human form. I saw Father Mackenzie struggle to his knees, praying over me. I saw Rita's face, tears streaming down her cheeks, and behind her, just for a moment, I thought I saw Maria, smiling. Everything went black. After that, I don't know how long I was gone. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying on the floor of my cabin. Joseph Tahola was burning sage, the smoke swirling around me. Rita was holding my hand, her face pale with shock. "You died," she whispered. "For 2 minutes, you were gone." I tried to sit up. There was no wound in my chest, no blood on my shirt, just a small, perfectly round scar over my heart. "The spirits took your sacrifice but returned your life," Joseph explained. "Such a thing has never happened before. They must have been satisfied with your choice." Father Mackenzie was gone. Rita told me he'd stayed just long enough to see me start breathing again, then had walked into the forest, following the newly human forms of the dogmen. He was helping them, she said. They were lost, confused, returned to human form after. Decades as monsters. The Alpha was gone too. Whatever piece of Maria had been trapped inside him was free now. The curse was broken. I found my journal later lying open on the table. The last entry was in my handwriting, but I didn't remember writing it. The chimes are singing my name in Maria's voice. We left Whisper Ridge the next day. Joseph performed a final ceremony, purifying the ground and making it truly sacred again. The dogmen, now just confused, traumatized men, were taken to the Keno Reservation for healing. Rita and I drove back to Chicago together. We didn't talk much on the way. What could we say about what had happened? Who would believe us? A week after we got back, my radio crackled to life in the middle of the night. I'd kept it, though I wasn't sure why. Dutch. Rita's voice came through, though she was sleeping in the next room. I can hear Maria laughing. She says thank you. She says welcome home. I went to check on Rita, but she was sound asleep. The radio continued to crackle softly, playing what sounded like a child's laughter beneath the static. I still have the scar over my heart. Sometimes it aches when the moon is full. Joseph says that's normal, a reminder of a debt paid in full. I don't know if the dogmen will ever return to Whisper Ridge. I don't know if what happened there was real or some kind of shared madness. But I know that sometimes, when I'm half asleep, I can hear bone chimes singing in the distance, and I know that whatever happens, I won't run away this time. I still dream about Whisper Ridge. In my dreams, I'm running through those thick pine trees, but I'm not scared anymore. I'm just running, free and wild under the moon. Sometimes I see Tommy there, whole and human again. He waves at me but never speaks. Rita and I bought a small house on the outskirts of Chicago. We're not together like that. We're just two people who went through something nobody else would understand. She works at a flower shop now. I got a job as a night security guard at a warehouse. Simple work that gives me plenty of time to think. The tremor in my hands never fully went away. It comes and goes like the tide. Worse when the moon is full, better when it's dark. Doctor says it's probably nerve damage or stress. I don't bother telling him the truth. About a month after we got back, Father Mackenzie sent us a letter. No return address. Just a single page with 3 sentences. All 23 men from 1952 have been found. They're getting help. Some things can be healed, even after all this time. Joseph Tahola calls sometimes. He never says much, just checks that I'm still me, that nothing followed us back from Whisper Ridge. He told me the lumber camp has been officially closed off. Tribal land now, protected by new laws. No more bone chimes singing in those woods. At least, that's what he says. I went to visit Maria's grave last week. Left some flowers. Little yellow ones that Rita said were Maria's favorite. While I was sitting there, a dog came up to me. Big, thin, grey fur, yellow eyes. It just sat beside me, staring at the headstone. When I reached out to pet it, it licked my hand once, right across my palm where the tremor is worst. The shaking stopped for a whole day after that. Rita says I should write everything down, make a record of what happened. I started to, but the words never come out right. How do you explain something like Whisper Ridge? How do you make someone believe in dogmen and bone chimes and curses that last for generations? Last night, I found a small bundle of sticks and feathers hanging. From my bedroom doorknob, a protection charm, just like the ones Joseph used to leave. I didn't put it there. Rita says she didn't either. We both pretend not to be scared. The radio still crackles sometimes late at night when the house is quiet. No voices come through. Anymore, just a soft humming, like someone singing a lullaby just below the range of hearing. It's almost comforting now. I got a letter last week from the police department in a small town near the Olympic Peninsula. They're looking for a retired cop to join their force. Someone who knows the area, the letter said. Someone who understands the special nature of the region. At the bottom, in handwriting I recognized as Tommy's, were the words, "We need you. It's starting again." I haven't told Rita about the letter yet. I don't know if I'm going back. part of me says to burn the letter, stay away from Whisper Ridge forever. But another part, the part that carries the scar over my heart, knows I might not have a choice. Some debts can never be fully paid. Some stories don't really end. Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I stand at my window and look out at the moon. I wonder if the Alpha is really gone. I wonder if what happened at Whisper Ridge was just the beginning of something bigger. I wonder if Maria is truly at peace, or if some small part of her is still trapped in those woods, waiting for me to return. I keep my gun with the blessed bullets close, just in case. I check the chamber. Every night before bed, 1 bullet missing, 5 still waiting, just in case the bone collectors come calling again. My name is Catherine Rodriguez, but everyone calls me Cat. I'm a doctor, an ER surgeon to be exact, or at least I was, until 6 months ago when everything fell apart. I still see his face in my dreams, the little boy on my operating table. I did everything right, followed every procedure, but he died anyway. His parents didn't see it that way. The lawsuit dragged on for months, and even though the hospital settled, my reputation was ruined. Nobody wants a surgeon with a dead child hanging over their head. That's how I ended up here, in the middle of nowhere. The boundary waters of Minnesota, they call it. Miles of forests, lakes, and not much else. I told everyone I was opening a healing retreat, but really I was running away. Bone Lake is beautiful in a strange way. The water is so clear you can see straight to the bottom in some places, but there's something off about it. Too still, maybe. The locals don't swim in it. When I asked why, they just shrug and say it's not right. Jimmy arrived yesterday, my 8-year-old nephew. My sister thought a summer away from the city would be good for him, and honestly, I needed the company. He's a great kid, all questions and energy, his dark hair always falling in his eyes. He reminds me of myself at that age, before I knew how easily the human body could fail. "Aunt Cat, can we go fishing today?" he asked this morning over breakfast. "Sure thing, buddy. But first, I need to check on a few things at the clinic." The clinic is just a renovated cabin by the lake. Nothing fancy, just enough medical equipment to justify calling this place a retreat. I still have my surgical tools, though I don't expect to need them out here. Some habits are hard to break. We were heading down to the dock when I noticed the man, tall with a clipboard, making notes as he walked the shoreline. "Can I help you?" I called out. He looked up, startled, then smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Marcus Bellwether," he said, extending his hand. "Helix Corporation. We're doing some final environmental assessments." "Final?" I asked. "The company used to have a research station here, back in the 70s. Just making sure everything's properly cleaned up." Something about the way he said it made my skin crawl, but I smiled and shook his hand anyway. "Dr. Catherine Rodriguez, I've opened a medical retreat here." His eyebrows shot up. "A doctor? What kind?" "Surgeon," I said, and immediately regretted it when I saw the interest flash in his eyes. Jimmy tugged at my sleeve. "Aunt Cat, can we go now?" Marcus looked down at Jimmy with an expression I couldn't read. "Your son?" "Nephew," I corrected. "He's staying with me for the summer." "Well, don't let me keep you," Marcus said, backing away. "I'm sure we'll see each other again." We fished all morning, Jimmy giggling every time he caught something. I taught him how to clean the fish, and he only winced a little at the blood. The lake was generous, maybe too generous. Every cast brought in a fish, as if they were eager to be caught. That afternoon, I noticed a young woman taking pictures of the lakeshore with an expensive camera. She had long black hair in a braid and moved with purpose. "That's private property," I called out. She turned, not at all embarrassed at being caught. "The lake isn't private. It belongs to everyone." Her voice was steady, confident. "I'm Anna Kingbird. I'm documenting environmental damage for the tribal council." "What damage?" I asked. She gestured to the water. "Look closely at the shoreline. See those metal drums half buried in the mud? That's from Helix. They never cleaned up properly. I squinted and saw what she meant. Rusted containers that I'd assumed were just rocks. Is it dangerous? I asked, thinking of Jimmy swimming in the lake. Anna's face softened slightly. Not in the way you're thinking. The water here, it does strange things, heals things that shouldn't heal. Before I could ask what she meant, Jimmy came running up, clutching his hand. Blood dripped between his fingers. I was trying to fix my fishing hook, he explained, tears in his eyes. I immediately went into doctor mode, leading him inside to clean the wound. It was a nasty cut across his palm, the kind that would normally need stitches. Hold still, I said, cleaning away the blood. But as the water from the tap, lake water, pumped through a filter, washed over his hand, something strange happened. The edges of the cut began to close before my eyes. Within seconds, the wound had sealed itself, leaving only a faint pink line. That didn't hurt at all, Aunt Cat, Jimmy said, amazed. I stared at his hand, my medical training failing to explain what I'd just seen. No, I guess it didn't. That night, an unexpected visitor arrived. A small Asian woman in her 50s knocked on my door just as I was putting Jimmy to bed. Dr. Rodriguez? She asked. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Chen. We need to talk. I let her in, curious but cautious. She refused tea, refused to sit, just paced around my living room examining everything. You shouldn't be here, she finally said. Not with a child. This place isn't safe. What are you talking about? I used to work for Helix, she said, right here at this lake. What we did, it was wrong. The lake has properties, healing properties, but they come with a price. Some healing comes with interest. I thought of Jimmy's hand, how quickly it had healed. What kind of interest? Dr. Chen's eyes were haunted. The worst kind. The kind that hunger follows. That night, I dreamed of surgeries where my patients healed as soon as I cut them, their flesh knitting back together around my scalpel. I woke to the sound of the refrigerator door closing. Jimmy stood in the kitchen, illuminated by the fridge light, eating raw hamburger meat with his fingers. I'm just so hungry, Aunt Cat, he said, his voice different somehow. Nothing else tastes right. The next morning, I found Marcus and a team of people in white hazmat suits setting up equipment near the lake. Environmental assessment, he explained with that same empty smile. Nothing to worry about. But I was already worried, because when Jimmy woke up, he had no memory of his midnight snack, and the cut on his hand had completely disappeared. Not even a scar remained. That afternoon, Anna came by the clinic with a cut on her arm. Caught it on some metal by the shore, she explained. As I cleaned her wound, I noticed the same accelerated healing I'd seen with Jimmy, though not as pronounced. The water does this to everyone? I asked. Anna nodded. That's why the tribal council has been fighting to get this area cleaned up for decades. The lake, it remembers. The mining pollution from the 1920s, the experiments in the 60s and 70s, it's all still there, in the water, in the mud. Experiments? Helix was never just a research station. They were experimenting on people, combining traditional healing, knowledge with their pharmaceuticals. Her eyes met mine. They created something that should not exist. Oh, what are you talking about? The Wendigo, a creature of hunger and healing. The elders say it was once a medicine man who volunteered for Helix's experiments, hoping to help his people. But what they did to him, it changed him. I wanted to dismiss it as superstition, but after what I'd seen with Jimmy's hand, I couldn't. That evening, Dr. Chen returned, bringing files and old photographs. Helix never left, she said, spreading the materials on my table. They just went underground. They're still conducting research here. The photos showed the area around the lake over time, the research facility being built, protests by indigenous groups, and supposedly the facility being dismantled. But in the most recent photos, there were still structures visible, hidden among the trees. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I think they brought you here on purpose," Dr. Chen said. "Your malpractice case, it was too convenient. Helix has connections in the medical community. They need a surgeon." "For what?" "To study the Wendigo, to learn how it weaves flesh." Before I could demand more answers, Jimmy screamed from his bedroom. I ran to him, finding him sitting up in bed, his eyes wide with terror. "There was someone at the window," he whispered, "but not a person. It was all bones and skin, and it had doctor things sticking out of it." I held him until he fell back asleep, then rejoined Dr. Chen in the living room. "I want the truth," I demanded. "All of it." Dr. Chen sighed. "The truth is worse than you can imagine. Come with me." She led me to a small shed near the water's edge that I'd assumed was for storing boats. Inside, she moved aside some equipment to reveal a trapdoor. "The research facility was never completely dismantled," she explained as we descended a ladder into darkness. "This is just one of many access points." She switched on a flashlight, revealing a long corridor carved into the rock beneath the lake. The walls were lined with what looked like medical equipment, but strangely modified, almost organic in appearance. At the end of the corridor was a room. Dr. Chen hesitated before opening the door. "What I'm about to show you," she said quietly, "is why I've spent the last decade trying to shut Helix down." The room beyond was a nightmare. Medical pods lined the walls, each containing a person, or what had once been a person. They were alive in some horrible sense of the word. Their bodies had been modified, organs exposed, tissues merged with medical equipment. Some had multiple limbs, others had none. All were connected to the walls by tubes and wires. "Organ farms," Dr. Chen explained, her voice clinical but her eyes full of shame. "Helix keeps them alive indefinitely. The lake water's properties allow for endless regeneration. They harvest organs, and the subjects just grow them back." I stumbled backward, my medical training warring with horror. "This is impossible." "No," said a voice behind us. Marcus stood in the doorway, flanked by two men in white coats. "This is progress." As we were escorted back to the surface, I noticed movement in the lake. Something pale and emaciated emerged from the water, humanoid but wrong. Its body was a patchwork of surgical scars, and where its mouth should have been was what looked like medical instruments, fused with flesh. The Wendigo had arrived, and as it turned its gaze toward my cabin, I knew with terrible certainty that it was looking for Jimmy. I grabbed Jimmy from the cabin and ran, not to the road, Marcus would expect that, but deeper into the woods, following a path Anna had shown me earlier that week. "Aunt Cat, what's happening?" Jimmy asked, his voice small and frightened. He stumbled over roots and rocks, but I didn't slow down. "We need to find Anna," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "She'll know what to do." The truth was, I had no idea what to do. What I'd seen in that underground room went against everything. I knew about medicine, about what was possible with the human body. And that thing in the lake, the Wendigo, I couldn't even begin to understand what it was. We found Anna at a small campsite about a mile from the lake. She took one look at our faces and knew. "You saw it," she said. It wasn't a question. I nodded, trying to catch my breath. "The thing in the lake, and the facility underneath, the people they're keeping there." Anna's face hardened. "Helix never left. They just went deeper underground." "What do they want with us?" I asked, holding Jimmy close. "Not us," Anna said, looking at Jimmy. "Him." Jimmy looked up at me, confused and scared. "Me? Why me?" Before Anna could answer, a twig snapped nearby. Dr. Chen emerged from the darkness, her clothes wet and muddy. "I managed to slip away," she said. "Marcus thinks I'm still in the facility." "Dr. Chen, what's happening?" I demanded. "Why is Helix interested in Jimmy?" Dr. Chen sighed and sat down heavily on a log. "Children respond most strongly to the lake's properties. Their cells are more adaptable, more malleable, and Jimmy has been exposed to the water." I thought about how quickly his cut had healed. "The Wendigo, what is it exactly?" "He," Dr. Chen corrected. "He was once a man, an Ojibwe healer named Joseph Kingbird." Anna's head snapped up. "My grandfather," Dr. Chen nodded. "In the 1960s, Helix approached the tribe, claiming they wanted to study traditional healing methods. Joseph volunteered, believing he could help bridge the gap between traditional and modern medicine. But Helix had other plans. They experimented on him, I guessed. Yes, but it went wrong. The combination of the lake's properties and Helix's chemicals transformed him. He gained incredible healing abilities, the power to manipulate flesh and bone, but at a terrible cost. He developed an insatiable hunger. "For what?" I asked, though I feared I already knew the answer. "For living tissue," Dr. Chen said quietly. "Preferably human." Jimmy whimpered and I held him tighter. "But there's more," Dr. Chen continued. "The Wendigo retains some of Joseph's original personality. He wants to heal, to help, but his methods have become monstrous, and he's drawn to those with similar abilities." "Like Jimmy," I whispered. "The cut that healed too quickly," Anna said. "The lake water has already begun changing him." I thought about Jimmy eating raw meat in the middle of the night. "What can we do?" "We need to get Jimmy away from here," Anna said firmly. "Far away from the lake." "It's not that simple," Dr. Chen warned. "The changes have already begun, and Helix won't let him go easily. They've been trying to create more Wendigos for decades." Jimmy tugged at my sleeve. "Aunt Cat, my stomach hurts." I looked down and froze. Jimmy's veins were visible beneath his skin, pulsing with an unnatural blue light. His fingers were elongating slightly, the nails becoming sharper. "It's happening faster than I expected," Dr. Chen said, backing away slightly. "Don't you dare act scared of him," I snapped. "He's just a boy." "For now," she replied softly. "That night we took turns keeping watch. When it was my turn, I noticed Jimmy twitching in his sleep, his face contorted in pain. I placed my hand on his forehead to check for fever, and the strangest thing happened. My fingers tingled, and suddenly I could feel every bone, every muscle, every vein in Jimmy's body, as if I could reach inside and rearrange them if I wanted to. I pulled my hand back, horrified. What was happening to me? The next morning, Anna went to scout the area around the lake while Dr. Chen stayed with Jimmy. I took the opportunity to examine my hands. They looked normal, but something felt different. When I concentrated, I could see the bones beneath my skin, could feel the blood flowing through my veins. When Anna returned, her face was grim. "Helix has brought in more people. They're setting up equipment all around the lake." "For what?" I asked. "I think they're trying to capture the Wendigo," she said, "or at least collect samples from it." Dr. Chen looked thoughtful. "That makes sense. The Wendigo's abilities would be invaluable for medical research. Imagine being able to regenerate organs, heal any wound. At what cost?" I demanded. "Look what it did to Joseph Kingbird. Look what it's doing to Jimmy." As if on cue, Jimmy let out a cry. We rushed to his side to find him clutching his arm. Before our eyes, a deep cut appeared on his skin, then immediately began to close, the edges pulling together without leaving a scar. "It's starting," Dr. Chen said. "His body is changing, testing its new abilities." "Make it stop," Jimmy whimpered. "I don't know if we can," Dr. Chen admitted, "but I have an idea. The original research files might contain information that could help us reverse the process." "Where are those files?" I asked. "In the main research facility, under the lake." We all knew what that meant. Someone would have to go back. "I'll go," I said. "Marcus doesn't know I've seen everything yet. I can pretend I'm still in the dark." "It's too dangerous," Anna argued. "What choice do we have?" I asked, looking at Jimmy. His skin was becoming paler, almost translucent. Before anyone could answer, we heard footsteps approaching. Marcus emerged from the trees, flanked by two men in white coats. "Dr. Rodriguez," he said pleasantly, as if we were meeting for coffee. "I think it's time we had a proper talk." The men moved forward, but instead of grabbing us, they set up a small projector against a tree. Marcus pulled out a remote. "I want to show you something," he said. "Something that might help you understand why you're here." The projector flickered to life, showing old footage from what looked like the 1960s. A man in traditional Ojibwe clothing was speaking to a group of scientists. "That's my grandfather," Anna whispered. Joseph Kingbird's voice filled the clearing. "Our people have known the healing properties of this lake for generations, but there is a balance to it, a cost that must be respected. I volunteer myself to help you understand this gift, but you must promise to use it wisely." The footage changed, showing Joseph undergoing various tests and procedures. As the video progressed, his appearance began to change. His skin grew paler, his frame more emaciated. In the final clip, he was barely recognizable as human, his embody a patchwork of surgical scars and medical implements. "Your grandfather was a pioneer," Marcus said to Anna. "His sacrifice advanced medical science by decades." "You destroyed him," Anna hissed. Marcus shrugged. "A regrettable side effect, but we've learned much since then. The process can be refined, controlled." He turned to me. "That's where you come in, Dr. Rodriguez." "Me?" I asked, though I was beginning to understand. "We've been watching your career for years. Your surgical skills are exactly what we need to study the Wendigo's methods. The malpractice suit was unfortunate, but it made you available." The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. "You set me up, that boy on my table." Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. "A necessary sacrifice for the greater good." I lunged at him, but the men in white coats caught me easily. One of them pulled out a syringe. "Don't make this difficult." "Dr. Rodriguez," Marcus said, "we need your expertise, and of course we need your nephew." Jimmy cowered behind Anna, who stood protectively in front of him. "You can't have him," I snarled. "I'm afraid that's not up to you," Marcus replied. "The boy has already begun the transformation. Without proper supervision, he'll become just like the original Wendigo, dangerous, uncontrollable." "And with your supervision?" Dr. Chen asked bitterly. "He'll become the first of a new generation of medical miracles," Marcus said. "Imagine soldiers who can heal instantly in battle. Organs that regenerate for transplant patients. The end of death itself." "At the cost of his humanity," I said. Marcus shrugged again. "Progress requires sacrifice." One of the men moved toward Jimmy, but before he could reach him, something burst from the undergrowth. The Wendigo, its emaciated form moving with impossible speed, grabbed the man and dragged him into the woods. His screams cut off abruptly. In the chaos, I broke free from the other man's grip. Dr. Chen grabbed Jimmy and we ran, following Anna deeper into the forest. "Where are we going?" I gasped as we fled. "To the only place that might be safe," Anna replied. "The old tribal healing grounds. The Wendigo won't go there." As we ran, I noticed something strange. My awareness of my body, of the bodies around me, was growing stronger. I could sense Dr. Chen's racing heart, could feel the blood rushing through Anna's veins. And Jimmy was changing more rapidly now. His bones were elongating, his muscles reshaping themselves. When we finally stopped to rest, I pulled Dr. Chen aside. "Something's happening to me too," I admitted, showing her my hands. "I can feel things inside people." Dr. Chen examined my fingers with a frown. You've been exposed to the lake water, and you've been in close contact with Jimmy. His transformation is accelerating yours. My transformation into what? I don't know exactly, she said, but the Wendigo isn't just one thing. It's a spectrum of changes. Joseph Kingbird became what he is because of specific experiments Helix performed. Your changes might be different. I thought about the strange awareness I'd felt when touching Jimmy, the sense that I could rearrange his insides if I wanted to. I think I'm becoming some kind of surgeon, I whispered, but not a normal one. Dr. Chen nodded grimly. The flesh weaver. That night, Jimmy's condition worsened. He writhed in pain, his body twisting and reshaping itself. I tried to comfort him, but when I touched him, something terrible happened. My fingers sank into his flesh as if it were clay, and I could feel his organs beneath, feel how I could move them, reshape them. I pulled back, horrified, but not before I felt something else, a hunger, a desire to keep touching, to keep reshaping, to take something from him. What's happening to me? I asked Dr. Chen, my voice breaking. I think I know, she said quietly. Your enhanced abilities, they're coming from Jimmy. You're unconsciously consuming his regenerating tissue. The thought made me sick, but deep down I knew she was right. Every time I'd touched Jimmy, I'd felt stronger, more aware. I can't control it, I admitted. Then don't touch him, Anna said harshly. She'd been listening from nearby. Stay away from him. He's my nephew, I protested. And my grandfather was a healer, Anna replied. Look what Helix turned him into. We were interrupted by a strange sound, a metallic scraping coming from my backpack. I opened it cautiously to find my surgical tools moving on their own, the scalpels and forceps twisting and reshaping like living things. What the hell? I gasped, dropping the bag. The tools spilled out, continuing to move and change. They began to fuse together, forming something that looked disturbingly like a hand. The medical instruments, Dr. Chen breathed. They're becoming living entities. How is that possible? I asked. The lake affects everything, Anna explained. Not just people. Tools, equipment, especially things used for healing or harm. Your surgical instruments have been exposed to both the lake and to Jimmy. As we watched, the hand-like collection of surgical tools crawled back into my bag. This is getting worse, I said. We need to find a way to stop it. Dr. Chen looked thoughtful. The original research might hold the key. If we can understand how Joseph Kingbird was transformed, we might be able to reverse the process. That means going back to the facility, I said. Yes, she agreed, but not alone. And we need to hurry. Jimmy doesn't have much time. As if to emphasize her point, Jimmy let out a cry that was no longer entirely human. His fingers had elongated into claw-like appendages, and his skin had taken on a grayish pallor. Aunt Cat, he said, his voice distorted, I'm so hungry. The look in his eyes terrified me more than anything else I'd seen, because I recognized it. It was the same hunger I'd been feeling, the desire to consume, to take, to reshape. We were both becoming monsters, and time was running out. The tribal healing grounds were nothing like I expected. No fancy buildings or equipment, just a small clearing surrounded by ancient oak trees, with a fire pit in the center. But I could feel something different in the air here, something that pushed back against the wrongness spreading through Jimmy and me. We need to go back to the facility, I told Anna and Dr. Chen, as we settled Jimmy on a bed of soft moss. His skin was almost transparent now, the veins beneath pulsing with that unnatural blue light. Not we, Dr. Chen said firmly. Just me. I know the layout, the security systems. I can get the research files. It's too dangerous for you to go alone, I argued. More dangerous for all of us to go, she countered. Someone needs to stay, with Jimmy, and you. She glanced at my hands, which were starting to look paler, the veins more prominent. You're changing too quickly. I knew she was right. Every hour, I felt less like myself and more like something else. The hunger was growing, the urge to touch, to reshape, to take. "I'll go with her," Anna said unexpectedly. "I know these woods better than anyone. I can get her to the facility and back safely." I wanted to argue, but what choice did we have? Jimmy was getting worse by the minute, and my own transformation wasn't far behind. "Be careful," I said. "Marcus and his team will be looking for us." After they left, I sat beside Jimmy, careful not to touch him. He drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes looking at me with recognition, other times with a hunger that mirrored my own. "Aunt Cat," he whispered during one lucid moment, "I can hear the lake." "What's it saying, buddy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's not talking, it's singing, like it's happy about what's happening to us." His eyes met mine, suddenly clear and aware. "I don't want to be a monster." "You won't be," I promised, though I had no idea how to keep that promise. "We're going to fix this." Jimmy's expression turned thoughtful. "The Wendigo. I can feel him too. He's not just hungry, he's sad. He wants to die." I remembered what Dr. Chen had said, that the Wendigo retained some of Joseph Kingbird's original personality, that he still wanted to heal, to help, but his methods had become monstrous. "How do you know that?" I asked. Jimmy touched his chest. "I can feel it, right here, like we're connected somehow." Before I could ask more, we heard movement in the trees. I tensed, expecting Marcus or his men, but instead, the Wendigo itself emerged from the shadows. Up close, it was both more and less human than I'd thought. Its body was emaciated to the point where bones showed through skin, yet impossibly strong. Surgical tools and medical devices had fused with its flesh, scalpels for fingers, tubes, and wires woven through its torso. But its eyes were still human, filled with a terrible awareness. I stepped in front of Jimmy, though I knew I was no match for the creature. "Stay back." To my surprise, the Wendigo stopped. It tilted its head, studying me, then Jimmy. When it spoke, its voice was a raspy whisper, forced through a throat that hadn't been used for speech in decades. "Surgeon," it said, looking at me. Then, turning to Jimmy, "Child." "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice from shaking. The Wendigo gestured to itself with its scalpel fingers. "Fix. End." It took me a moment to understand. "You want me to heal you, to end your suffering?" The creature nodded, a jerky, unnatural movement. Too long, too much hunger. Jimmy stepped out from behind me, ignoring my attempt to hold him back. "You're Joseph Kingbird," he said, "Anna's grandfather." Again that jerky nod. "Was, now this." "Helix did this to you," I said. "They turned you into this." "Volunteered," the Wendigo rasped. "Wanted to help, went wrong." I looked at its body, the grotesque fusion of flesh and medical equipment. No wonder it wanted to die, but how could I possibly help it? I was a surgeon, yes, but this was beyond any medical science I knew. "I don't know how to fix you," I admitted. The Wendigo pointed at my hands. "Changing, like me, can fix." I looked down at my hands, which were now visibly different, the fingers longer, the skin paler, the veins glowing faintly blue. The changes that had started when I touched Jimmy were accelerating. "If I help you," I said slowly, "will you help Jimmy? Stop his transformation?" The Wendigo was silent for a long moment. "Can try. No promise." It was better than nothing. But before I could agree, we heard voices approaching. Marcus and his team had found us. The Wendigo melted back into the shadows just as Marcus entered the clearing, flanked by 4 men in white coats. All were armed. "There you are," Marcus said, as casual as if he'd run into us at the grocery store. "You're making this much more difficult than it needs to be, Dr. Rodriguez." Stay away from us, I warned, pulling Jimmy close despite the risk of accelerating my transformation. Marcus sighed. I understand your concerns, really I do, but you're looking at this all wrong. What's happening to Jimmy to you? It's evolution. The next step in human development. It's a disease, I spat, caused by your company's pollution and experiments. A disease that grants eternal life, Marcus countered. Perfect healing. The ability to reshape human tissue at will. Do you have any idea what that's worth? My humanity, I asked. Jimmy's future. Joseph Kingbird's soul. Marcus waved a dismissive hand. Acceptable losses for the greater good. That's not your call to make. No, he agreed. It's Helix's, and they've decided the research continues. He gestured to his men. Take them both. Try not to damage the boy. As the men moved forward, I felt something change inside me. The hunger that had been growing surged, and with it came power. I raised my hands, which no longer looked human at all, and somehow I knew what to do. I reached out, not physically, but with my mind, and I could feel their bodies, every bone, every muscle, every drop of blood. I could control it all. Two of the men dropped to their knees, clutching their chests as I squeezed their hearts. Another fell screaming as I twisted his bones. The fourth fired his weapon, but I felt the bullet enter my shoulder and then push itself back out as my flesh healed instantly. Marcus backed away, his confident facade cracking. What have you done to yourself? What you wanted, I said, my voice changing, becoming raspier, more like the Wendigos. I'm evolving. A part of me was horrified at what I was doing, at how easy it was to hurt these men, but another part, a growing part, reveled in the power. Before I could do more, Anna and Dr. Chen burst into the clearing from the opposite side, followed by a group of Ojibwe men and women carrying torches. "Stop!" Anna shouted. "Cat, don't let it control you." Her voice cut through the haze of power and hunger. I lowered my hands, and the men I'd been torturing collapsed, unconscious but alive. Marcus used the distraction to slip away into the trees. "Did you get the files?" I asked, trying to ignore the disappointment I felt at losing my prey. Dr. Chen nodded, holding up a flash drive. Everything Helix did to Joseph Kingbird, all their research on the lake's properties. "And I brought help," Anna added, gesturing to the Ojibwe group. "The tribal council. They've agreed to perform the healing ceremony." "Will it work?" I asked, looking at Jimmy, whose transformation had advanced even further. His eyes were now entirely black, his fingers elongated into claws. "It might," Anna said, "combined with the scientific knowledge from the files." Dr. Chen was already reviewing the data on a laptop she'd brought. "According to this, the transformation can be reversed, but only at great cost. It requires a compatible donor." "What kind of donor?" I asked. Dr. Chen looked up, her expression grave. "Someone who has begun the transformation but not completed it. Someone who can provide the genetic material needed to stabilize both Jimmy and the Wendigo." It took me a moment to understand what she was saying. "Me. I have to be the donor." "No," Dr. Chen said. "I'll do it. I've been exposed to the lake for years. My body has been changing slowly, adapting." "But you're not showing any signs of transformation," I argued. "Because I've been fighting it, taking medications I developed to slow the process." She rolled up her sleeve, revealing skin that looked normal at first glance, but upon closer inspection had a subtle sheen to it, like fish scales. "I'm further along than you think." Before I could argue further, the Wendigo returned, stepping into the firelight. The Ojibwe warriors raised their weapons, but Anna stopped them. "No," she said. "He's here to help." The tribal elders began the ceremony, chanting in a language I didn't understand while burning herbs that filled the clearing with sweet smoke. Dr. Chen worked alongside them, combining their traditional knowledge with the scientific data from the files. The lake's power comes from the mercury pollution, she explained, as she prepared what looked like a strange mixture of herbs and chemicals. The mining company in the 1920s dumped tons of it into the water. It should have killed everything, but instead it merged with the natural healing properties of the lake to create this, something that heals but corrupts at the same time. How do we fix it? I asked. We can't fix the lake, she said. Not yet, but we can heal those affected by it. The ceremony combined with this compound should reverse the changes in Jimmy. And the Wendigo? Dr. Chen's expression softened. Joseph Kingbird has suffered for decades. The kindest thing we can do is release him. The Wendigo heard this and nodded its agreement. As the ceremony continued, I felt a strange pulling sensation, as if something was being drawn out of me. Looking down, I saw the blue glow in my veins fading, my fingers returning to their normal shape. The hunger was receding too, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion. Jimmy was changing as well, his features becoming more human again, the blackness fading from his eyes. He slumped against me, unconscious but breathing steadily. The Wendigo watched all this with those terribly human eyes. When the tribal elders approached it with their mixture, it knelt willingly, accepting what was to come. Dr. Chen stepped forward. I'll administer it. No, I said, suddenly understanding. That's why you brought me here, isn't it? You need a surgeon. She nodded reluctantly. The compound needs to be delivered directly to his heart. It's the only way to end his suffering, permanently. I looked at the surgical tools that had fused with the Wendigo's body. Scalpels, forceps, tubing, all the instruments of my profession turned into instruments of torture. I'll do it, I said. I owe him that much. The tribal elders guided me through the procedure, which was unlike any surgery I'd ever performed. I used both my medical knowledge and the fading remnants of my supernatural abilities to locate the Wendigo's heart, still beating after all these decades, hidden beneath layers of transformed tissue and medical equipment. The Wendigo remained, conscious throughout, its eyes locked on mine. There was no fear there, only a desperate hope for release. When I finally reached its heart, I was shocked to find it look completely normal, a human heart surrounded by the monstrous changes that had overtaken the rest of the body. As I prepared to inject Dr. Chen's compound, the Wendigo spoke one last time. Thank you, it rasped. Free now. I administered the injection, and the effect was immediate. The Wendigo's body began to change, the medical implements falling away, the emaciated form filling out slightly. For a brief moment, I saw Joseph Kingbird as he must have been, a dignified man with kind eyes and a healer's hands. Then his body crumbled to ash, decades of unnatural life finally coming to an end. As dawn broke, Anna's tribal warriors surrounded the underground facility, setting fire to it and sealing the entrances. Marcus had escaped, but without his research or subjects, Helix's work here was finished. What about the lake? I asked Anna as we watched the smoke rise. The tribal council will protect it, she said. Keep people away until we can find a way to clean it properly. It will take time, but the land can heal. Jimmy was still weak but fully human again. The experience had changed him, though. I could see it in his eyes, a wisdom no 8-year-old should have. What about you, Aunt Cat? He asked, looking at my hands. Are you okay now? I examined my fingers, which appeared normal. The hunger was gone, the strange power with it. But I could still feel something different inside me, some fundamental change that couldn't be completely reversed. I'm okay, I said, and it wasn't entirely a lie. Just tired. Dr. Chen approached, looking exhausted but satisfied. The transformation has been halted, but not completely reversed. You'll both need regular treatments to prevent it from returning. What kind of treatments, I asked. A combination of the tribe's traditional medicine and what I've developed from Helix's research. She smiled sadly. I've spent decades trying to undo the damage we caused. This is a start. 3 months later, I stood on the shore of Bone Lake watching the sunset turn the water to fire. Jimmy had returned to the city to my sister with strict instructions for his continued treatment. The nightmares were fading, Dr. Chen had assured me. In time, he might even forget. I wouldn't forget. Couldn't. After everything that happened, I decided to stay. With Anna's help, I'd established a small clinic on the reservation, combining my surgical skills with the traditional healing methods I was slowly learning. It wasn't the career I'd planned, but it felt right. Dr. Chen visited regularly, monitoring my condition and helping to treat others who had been exposed to the lake over the years. There were more than we'd initially realized. People with strange ailments that no conventional doctor could diagnose. As for Marcus and Helix, they'd gone suspiciously quiet. The congressional hearings Anna had initiated with her documentation were ongoing, but corporations like Helix had ways of burying their secrets. I looked down at my hands in the fading light. Normal hands. Surgeon's hands. But sometimes, when I was tired or stressed, I could feel that other power stirring, the ability to reach inside, to reshape, to heal in ways no medical school had taught me. I'd sworn to use it only for good, only to heal. But the hunger never completely disappeared. It waited, patient as the lake itself. Jimmy visited during school breaks. We fished from the new dock I'd built, careful to release anything we caught back into the water. The fish were still not quite right, too eager to be caught, too quick to heal. "Do you think it will ever be normal again?" Jimmy asked during his last visit, watching a fish with slightly too many fins swim away. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Some damage can't be undone, but that doesn't mean we stop trying." He nodded, wise beyond his years. "Like us, we're not the same, but we're okay." "Yeah," I said, ruffling his hair, "we're okay." That night I dreamed of surgery again, of patients healing under my hands, of flesh responding to my touch. But it wasn't a nightmare anymore. In the dream, I worked alongside Anna's grandfather, the man he had been before Helix turned him into a monster. We healed together, bridging the gap between modern medicine and ancient knowledge. I woke feeling more at peace than I had in months. Outside my window, Bone Lake shimmered in the moonlight, its waters still and silent. Waiting, the lake remembered, the land remembered, and so would I. Because some healing comes with interest, and sooner or later, the debt always comes due.